Welcome to the Project with Sam and Lewis, the podcast that looks at projects throughout pop culture and history. I'm Sam.
And I'm Lewis.
And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about 2018's Project Gutenberg.
Certainly are.
Which is a Hong Kong crime thriller.
Yeah, I think this is an action film, but I don't think it's...
There's
apart from one big action piece.
Yeah, there's one big action set piece, which is,
It's more of a thriller, I'd say.
Yeah, it's a crime thriller. There's a couple of descriptions on the Amazon Prime thing, but they're a little bit spoilery.
Oh,
so
yeah, I'll get to that.
We'll talk about that as we go.
Partly fucked it for me.
But anyway, before that, how are you today, Lewis?
Yeah, not bad. Can't really complain. Had the last couple of days off, so just kind of been bumming around, doing nothing at home.
Yeah.
But it's quite nice sometimes.
Similar here, yeah. Not been up to too much. Kind of busy earlier in the week, but yeah, had a pretty chill week, really. So that's good. Just before we go into the usual project news segment, just wanted to kind of plug something up here, up front. Next episode is going to start our new season of something called what's it called, Lewis?
Project
October. So for the 4 episodes that come out over the month of October, we are going to be focusing purely on spooky, scary, Halloween-y type topics.
Yeah, we've got slightly different things for each one. So we've got a film, a TV show, a report, and a game for the first time.
Yeah, a video game for the first time. So we kind of discussed it in passing at the end of an episode. We didn't spoil it, so still got that surprise coming up. But so it should be a refreshing month of spooky content.
Yeah, I'm quite looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And you may actually hear a couple of new voices potentially.
Yes, you may well do. Yeah, we've got a couple of we call them special guests. I mean, they're special to us. So
could bring another dynamic to a couple of episodes.
Absolutely. But to project news, Lewis, do you want to give the listeners a bit of a rundown of what we normally do with that? Yeah.
So as always, I'll Google project, see what news has come up. This week's slightly different because the 2 pieces I've got. One was you sent to me earlier in the week, which is quite a fun headline, and the other one was a project news that I kind of specifically searched for because we'd heard about it.
It's been in the news the last week or so.
But anyway, the first one, which you sent to me, a lovely title it's got as well. UK gives military's frickin' laser cannon project a second roll of the dice.
Yes.
So
bit of an Austin Powers reference.
The freaking laser cannon. The UK has awarded contracts for laser cannons to be fitted to tanks and warships, and they're 5 years after first bounding into the field of directed energy weapons. It sounds utterly bonkers.
It's one of the maddest things that we've talked about somehow.
It kind of reminds me of Project A119 that we did last week in like a ridiculous story, but this is actually in the news and not some secret document.
Because you do see quite often, I'll get stuff pop up on YouTube, engineer guy makes real lightsaber or, stuff like that. But it's always like, it's a bit clickbaity. You watch it and it's like it's a heated plasma blade. Do you know what I mean? It's not as, but, and it's probably the same with this. I'm sure most cases you can't see a laser fly through the air, so it'll probably be
it's not like we imagine like a tank shooting a big like Star Wars like laser.
It'll be like almost like a microwave thing, I imagine. That you've got more information there because I didn't actually read through the article.
I'm just having a skim.
I imagine it's point it, maybe heat stuff up, disrupt stuff.
It'll be used for detecting and tracking nearby drones. so it's not like a gun.
So it's a really like misleading title there.
Like, I guess with drones becoming more and more prominent in military exercises, it's not a surprise they're starting to...
It's almost like infrared technology, really.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes sense. It's similar.
The US were experimenting with electromagnetic rail guns a few years ago.
Yeah.
But they're still experimenting on them. So, although I love the idea of like although I wouldn't ever want to see British tanks in war because war's bad, but the idea of them shooting lasers is quite comical.
They just turn up with like Halo tanks or whatever.
Yeah, it's like more than Star Wars. It makes me think of like Starship Troopers, like kind of like silly. I can't remember if they've got lasers in that, but I'm
sure there's some sort of laser technology in that.
Yeah, it just seems everyone seems to think that in the future we'll be shooting lasers.
Yeah,
and just lasers. Which,
but realistically, you know,
why?
But also, yeah, if you, as I said, if you could shoot a laser, as far as I'm aware, the situation has to be very right for you to be able to see it. Like a laser show requires smoke for it to, you know, hit.
Yeah, I assume we wouldn't see the lasers.
But unless it was like a smoky, dusty battlefield, suddenly you just see lasers everywhere.
Well, maybe they could bring in Project Cumulus and make it foggy or something. Referencing all the old projects.
There's no point in us having lasers unless you can see them. So we have to have weather affecting drones.
Although we talk about that and that episode hasn't actually come out yet, but that's a teaser for the future.
Oops.
Yeah, a teaser for a potential future episode that we've been discussing.
Cool. And then the second piece is a slightly bigger one.
So there's not a specific headline, but basically Christopher Nolan, famed director, very popular director, his next film is going to be about Robert Oppenheimer of the Manhattan Project. That's how we're linking it in.
Yes.
The Manhattan Project was the development of the nukes in World War II. He's apparently got quite a long list of demands for Universal.
Yeah, I've got a little note here. So normally he's been with Warner Brothers. I don't know if I imagine since he became kind of a bigger director, I think his first few independents were probably independents, his short films and stuff. I'm not sure if from Memento or maybe a little bit later, but yeah, he's been pretty much like a stable of Warner Brothers. They've been quite happy with him. He's been happy with them.
He always brings in the money, doesn't he?
And the thing that's changed it is the fact that Warner Brothers are releasing a lot of stuff on what's it called? HBO Max as well. So he was one of the directors who came out and was quite unhappy with that.
Yeah,
he's quite a cinema.
What film was it that he?
I'm not sure if it was one of his because he hasn't had one.
Tenet?
Oh yeah, sorry, it would have been Tenet. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I keep forgetting this pandemic's been going on as long as it has.
Yeah.
So Tenet was one that didn't get I mean, he pushed for it to have a cinema release, but I think it wasn't. It's quite a weak release.
I mean, I saw it in cinema, so I was back in Nolan.
Me too. Yeah.
I think it was the last film I saw before like everything was shut down. For,
and then Black Widow, I think.
Which we saw only like a month ago.
Yeah. Well. I think it was May, but
okay,
or July. I don't know.
Time goes mad.
But yeah, he's moved to Universal because they've obviously given him a better offer. The reported demands that he's made, some aren't too massive. Some are seen as quite, So 100 million budget, which we were just discussing before, is actually not massive for a film like that.
Yeah, we described it as like a smaller budget film, even though it's $100 million.
I mean, you'd imagine even if he goes a bit Nolan and does some kind of slightly unrealistic stuff with it, which, he probably won't because Dunkirk was pretty straight with it.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, apart from maybe they might do some nuclear effects towards the end. I think, you imagine it'd be more of a kind of drama,
it'd be more
grounded kind of thing.
Dunkirk than Tenet or Inception,
absolutely,
won't it?
Yeah. 20% of the first gross. So that's quite a big chunk, but I imagine that's not unheard of for a director.
Also, is it gross or is it net gross? Because
it just says first dollar gross on here, so I don't know what that
Hollywood
means.
accountings are weird in that like no films ever make any money according to the net gross.
100% creative control, which makes sense.
Yeah.
100 million on marketing, which sounds like a lot, but we've heard quite often before.
Yeah, you
double it.
You spend as much on marketing as you do on the film.
Which I know a lot of people in the comments for this post are really surprised about. But if it's a big budget film,
it's
they
kind
do
of
end up
standard
spending.
practice. It's just the marketing fees never really talked about.
Is insane when you think about something like Endgame, but also how much was Endgame everywhere.
Yeah. So
even though they probably didn't need to.
Endgame and Infinity War between them cost $500 million, didn't they? So I think they spent another they spent $1 billion making and releasing that film.
And apparently they made about $2 billion, did they?
It's like 2.5, 3 billion.
So they made a little bit extra, but
it makes sense.
And then there's a couple of slightly more, I don't know what the word is, but diva-ish demands. I don't know.
Diva-ish.
So one is 100+ days in cinema, which sounds like a lot.
Yeah,
that's like, more than 3 months.
3 months. That's mad.
That's quite insane. I was going to look up how long a film's normally in the cinema, but I imagine
it's
a
like
month and a half, maybe.
Yeah.
And then the other one is that the studio can't release another film 3 weeks before or 3 weeks after his film. So for 6 weeks. No, that's not even that, because that's the 100 days as well.
Is that included? So for
before and after, I don't know. It's probably not including that.
But okay.
Either way, 6 weeks where Universal, one of the biggest studios,
I guess
in Hollywood,
they'll shift their calendar around and have loads earlier. and loads
because they
after.
do things like Fast and Furious, Jurassic Park. I can't think of any else, but those are two of the biggest franchises.
They do a lot of big, and they've also got a lot of like one-off films. Like they constantly putting stuff out.
It's like now it's probably Sony, Disney, and Universal, probably the bigger ones.
Yeah,
stuff like Paramount, Lionsgate, stuff like that. But Universal are probably up there.
DreamWorks isn't what it once was.
I think Universal are probably DreamWorks are probably part of something else.
Yeah,
I just searched Universal Studios and guess what came up?
Go on.
The park of Universal Studios in Orlando.
That makes sense.
I won't bother looking into that now.
Yeah,
it's
one of those that like so many studios you don't realize are just owned by other studios, and turns out everything's owned by Amazon and Disney.
Yes, Amazon studios are now quite.
It was 20th Century Fox as well, was one of the big players.
That's it,
and now that's Disney as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And you still see there was something. Actually, I'll talk about it in personal projects, but I was watching something on Disney Plus that still says, I think it says 20th Century Studios or something at the start. Right. So it must have been started under them, at least pre-production.
I think that's still releasing stuff. They've just
taken away the Fox bit, is it? And now it's just
I think they're still releasing stuff under Fox. It's owned by Disney.
Right, well this is just 20th Century Studios.
Yeah, so I think they're still keeping... just 20th Century.
Yeah, because I think Fox is very Rupert Murdoch. It's Fox News, so I think they might have dropped that bit.
It's kind of weird how like Fox Films has always been quite distant from like Fox News.
Yes, it has been.
Like even in like the public consciousness, it's all Fox.
Yeah,
and or it was.
I was just looking up FX, the TV channel that does things like Legion, What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah,
that is Fox as well. Hence the name. I was thinking, I'm not sure about this.
No, I think I did know that.
And that's now. I don't think they need to change that necessarily because it's not as...
FX always just makes me a Family Guy at like 11 in the evening, like every night they're showing Family Guy.
Really?
I mean, I haven't watched it in probably 5-10 years, but
it makes me think of like I said, things like Legion, What We Do in the Shadows.
I don't know What We Do in the Shadows of FX.
Yeah, it's FX. It's on BBC Three here.
Oh, that's probably why.
BBC Three is not existent anymore, but yeah, Devs as well, pretty good stuff. But yeah, so that's exciting stuff. So we were talking actually, weren't we, when this first came out, the news about Nolan's new film, we were saying, can you imagine if it had the title The Manhattan Project?
Oh no, yeah.
Because it would be fantastic. But what did you say realistically?
I bet it'll be called Manhattan or Oppenheimer.
Yeah. Or something like, he seems to be going with one words recently, Tenet and Dunkirk.
Yeah, but like...
And even before, Memento.
Yeah, I mean...
Prestige is... Prestige.
And Inception.
Yeah.
Dunkirk is just like, they're going Dunkirk, it's just the title of the event, which makes you think like Manhattan or Oppenheimer. If it's more about Oppenheimer.
Imagine if it's just called The Project.
Oh my God.
Like, fuck yeah.
Or people
would do like a 3-part episode on it.
Yeah, it'll be like, it turns out the project is about the project.
It's been leading up to this.
Yeah.
It's like you see these like, film, comic book, movie podcast that started about a way off film that was really excited about like, Avengers or Batman v Superman.
Yeah, that builds up. It's the culmination.
We'll change the canon to
We've probably got, a couple of years before this film comes out?
Yeah, so we got a lot of news about it because no matter what they title it, it will still come up as about the Manhattan Project.
For us, it'll always be the Manhattan Project. The Project. Christopher Nolan's The Project. That's what I'm going with in my head.
Or it might be something called, what was it? Is it Oppenheimer who's like death becomes no, not
I've become death. No,
Destroyer of
Worlds.
So it might be called something like Destroyer or Project Destroyer. It would be interesting though, because I know we won't talk about this too much because we've got a fairly lengthy film to talk about. But it would be interesting for him to diverge somewhat, in the film. Because Dunkirk kind of, the thing that made Dunkirk not just a straight retelling was the kind of way it was told. It's a bit Pulp Fiction. It jumped around a bit. That was that kind of Nolan Memento kind of touch with it. So I imagine maybe they'll do something like that. Maybe tell it backwards, or But it would be interesting to see, like, make it a bit sci-fi or something. I don't know if that's a bit silly.
I saw some people talk about how, like, even in Dunkirk, there's like hints towards like time and stuff.
Yeah, there's the ticking motif in all the soundtracks.
So like.
Because to be fair, there's a decent third of that film where you don't realise what's going on.
Yeah.
And it might even be halfway when you see, spoilers for Dunkirk, you see Cillian Murphy. he's
spoilers for an event that happened like 70 years ago.
The film Dunkirk. Where you see Cillian Murphy gets rescued, and you see him earlier when he on the beaches kind of thing. And
I haven't seen it in a
you
few
kind of
years.
realise that.
But like the ticking time thing does make sense, considering he's making a film about making a bomb.
Yes, yeah.
Like having a ticking time bomb.
Yeah.
Does fit in really well.
Yeah, interesting. Or it could be one where, they could do. It's just interesting to do. It doesn't have to be like a sci-fi thing, but just kind of like an alternate history telling or something, which I know people are a bit hot and cold on as kind of students of history ourselves. I don't know how you feel about kind of alternate history stuff.
Open they are about, because like things like The Man in the High Castle.
That's what came to mind.
I'd stopped watching after season 1.
I think I don't even know if I finished season 1.
But it remains a fairly popular Amazon series. And that's all.
I think it might have
history.
finished now, but yeah.
It might help that comes from a Philip K. Dick book.
Yes, and the book is. The book is good. It's very short. Have you read it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's quite different.
It's very, very different to
because
the show.
In that there's someone's written, God, we're going so off topic, but someone's written the alternate history, or someone's written the real history. I don't know.
Yeah, and the book is kind of like, it's one of those books where like not too much plot happens, but it's the world building that makes the book interesting.
Absolutely, yeah. And in this TV show, don't they see news footage from our reality, and it's like even more like insane.
Yeah, it's like a alternate reality.
You know what? I kind of want to go back and watch it because I have no idea where that all goes.
I keep seeing stuff like mentioned of it on Reddit, and I'm like, I do want to go back to it because some of it was good. Some of it wasn't so good, but
it was one of those shows that dragged it out a bit. I think having read the book, a couple of years before, it's like novella, really, isn't it? It's practically a short story. I think I've actually got it up on that shelf there. But having read that, which moves a lot quicker, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was a bit like, oh, come on, get on with it. But
yeah, and it diverged a lot. Like the main character in the book is like a secondary character in the show.
That's right, yeah.
And but anyway.
Yeah,
let's move on.
Excited for Nolan's next project. Next project. Okay, so on to the main topic of the episode.
Yeah, so I've got the Google description if we want to start with that.
Yeah.
So 2018's Project Gutenberg, titled The Counterfeiter in the UK.
That's it, yeah.
Which it's only the UK.
It's only the UK, which is very strange.
But it's relevant to us because we watched it on Amazon Prime.
We did, yes.
But it was still like subtitled. And
it was, yeah. So the title that comes up in the film, I'm pretty sure, is still...
No, so the title in the film, the direct translation from Chinese is either no pair or without a pair.
Yes, which is a bit of a...
which we'll get to at the end. But anyway, the Google description says, the Hong Kong police hunt for a counterfeiting gang led by a mastermind known as Painter.
Yeah.
The gang is so skillful that it's almost impossible to distinguish between its counterfeit currency and real money. In an effort to find Painter's real identity, the police recruit artist Lee Man.
Yes.
Lee Man, who's the main character, played by Aaron Kwok.
Yes, who I saw in a thing, in a little what's it called? Review that said he was like ever ageless. So I'm just going to quickly look up how old he is, because how old would you say he was?
Maybe like 30, I think.
He's 55.
Bloody hell.
That's like incredibly. In 2019, there's a picture of him there. He looks exactly the same.
Yeah, that's the picture on Wikipedia.
Yeah,
like even there, he maybe looks in the film. He looks a bit younger, but there he maybe looks into like his mid to late 30s.
So yeah, and he's. I think so. The other actor who's in it is Chow Yun-fat.
Chow Yun-fat, yeah,
who's in quite a lot of.
You'd probably know him from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragons, or Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh yes, he's one of the pirate captains in the third one. Yeah, so he's 66. So there's only 11 years between. Wow.
See, I probably would have guessed like maybe like 50 for
like
him.
Father and son kind of ages. You'd say, wouldn't you? Because at one point I even thought, is that kind of where it's going? Because you kind of get hints at twists and turns. But yeah, Chow Yun-fat also, I remember watching him in Bulletproof Monk when I was younger, which is quite a terrible film with, I think it's Sean William Scott from American Pie.
Bloody
and
hell.
it's him, and then Chow Yun-fat. It's like a stupid kind of actiony film, like a John Woo ripoff. And I think, what is it, Hard Boiled is one of Chow Yun-fat's bigger films.
I don't. Oh well, the only ones I've seen of him in is I haven't even seen Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Right.
So I've literally only ever seen him in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Actually, we watched, didn't we, Shang-Chi in the cinema recently, and that's very inspired by Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. You've probably seen the visuals with bamboo and people leaping around before.
It's one of those films that's very much in the public
And I think
consciousness.
Michelle Yeoh, who's the older actress in that, she's also from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, opposite Chow Yun-fat. But yeah, where were you going with that?
It's just that Aaron Crockett, on the other hand, has mostly been in Hong Kong films that I haven't seen or really heard of. It came up
as singer when I just looked him up.
Yeah, he's got an extensive discography as well as filmography.
Yeah, singer is his first thing. Singer, dancer, and actor third.
Yeah, so I think he's probably one of those that made it as a singer and then moved over to the acting world and is just a generally big name in Hong Kong.
Yeah, it seems like it.
It always makes you feel when you think of like the Hong Kong film industry is like it is like a really big industry and it's its own thing, but Hong Kong is essentially a city.
Yeah, it's crazy. And even from Project A, which we did our third episode on, that was in 1983. Like that, it was a pretty big industry then, and it's just grown and grown.
Like 40 years later,
and you can see from the start of this film, there's almost 2 minutes of logos at the start. The amount of companies and studios that invested in this.
It's probably after like Hollywood, Bollywood, and maybe Japan. It's probably one of the next biggest. Like,
I think it might be. Yeah,
maybe ahead of Japan.
But then if you think it depends if you include anime in there as well.
Yeah,
because the anime revenue is, I'm sure, absolutely massive.
It always used to be a thing as well. It still kind of is Bollywood of like B movie, like less budget, less good than like Hollywood. But like watching like this, it's like Hong Kong film industry is as good
absolutely
as the Hollywood. It's just not in English, so we don't see as much of it.
Yeah, this is on par in, not necessarily saying that I would rate it in the same way as some films like a Nolan film or something, but some of the filmmaking is
like
on
the production, the cinematography, the editing.
The cinematography and editing, some of the sequences are very good. The one standout action scene, which we'll get to in time, was, ridiculous in lots of ways, but
looked really good. Like none of it looked out of place for if it was like a Hollywood film.
Absolutely. And I was actually going to watch it if I had time this morning. I was going to watch that scene again because I felt like it kind of just flew by because I didn't really take it in because I didn't think it was going to be like the only scene like that in the film almost.
Right, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But yeah, any numbers or anything?
Before that, worth talking about Felix Chong, the director.
Yes, yeah, I was going to...
who hasn't done too much well-known directing stuff, but wrote Internal Affairs and
Infernal Affairs.
Infernal Affairs.
Yeah. I know.
And the sequels.
Yes.
And wrote the screenplay on The Departed.
I was going to say, because Infernal Affairs was remade by Scorsese as The Departed. So it's the same film.
Yeah, that's probably why he's given us a screenplay.
And is it his first or one of his first directorial?
Yeah, one of. It's not the first.
Yeah, it mentioned it in that same review that I was skimming through. I was trying to find some trivia. I didn't get much. Well, that was pretty much it. That bit there about The Departed was the only thing I found, really.
Yeah, I should probably watch that because
I've seen it.
I love The Departed. Ago. I think it's brilliant.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, I haven't seen Infernal Affair. I'm pretty sure it's Infernal.
You really threw me that because the way I write like my handwriting,
yeah, it is Infernal Affairs.
F's can look a lot like T's. Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
But anyway, numbers wise, in US dollars because it's Hong Kong dollars translated, budget of $38 million.
Oh wow, so not particularly high.
Yeah, but a box office of $188 million. So. Cool. Last week we did Project X, which got 102 million and was by far
almost 10 times, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like our best film at the box office, and this is nearly double.
Yeah,
like it was massively successful. IMDb 6.9. It seems like every film, no matter what we talk about, is between 6 and 7.
I think a couple of weeks ago, if you put project in the title, you're destined for a 6-7.
It's just
rating.
The way the IMDb.
And funnily enough, a lot of our ratings seem to be 6s or 7s for the decent films. Anyway.
But Rotten Tomatoes, do you have a guess? Did you see? I
think
what
it was like 70.
83%.
Yeah, so
audience score 77.
Is that our highest?
Oh, by far. I think the highest was Project Power, which I think was about 66-ish.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely the best reviewed film by critics that we've done yet.
Oh yeah, that's critics. Yeah. So does that include, Chinese and Hong Kong?
I imagine
reviews?
So.
Yeah,
I imagine so because it's a Hong Kong film.
Yeah, because
it's probably heavily dependent on.
Yeah, interesting. But it did actually win. Did you see there's some awards on the Wikipedia?
So I was going to mention the end, but the 38th Hong Kong Film Awards, it was nominated for 16 awards.
Yeah,
this is like
I
the
just
Hong
saw
Kong.
The top and I was like, oh, I'll leave that. I thought Lewis will probably.
This is like the HongOng Oscars. Nominated for 16, it won 7, including Best Film, Best Director, and Best Screenplay, which like 3 of the top ones.
Yeah.
So like in 2018, this was the film of Hong Kong.
Yeah, that's kind of why. I think I saw either that, it's just briefly scrolling through Wikipedia, or it was the audience reception or whatever on Rotten Tomatoes. The combination of those two made me think, right, this is one that we should do.
Usually, like we talk about what film we're going to do, we come up with an idea, and then I'll kind of like think about it, look at it. And you kind of mentioned it earlier this week, and I was like, yeah, cool, we'll do that. And I didn't think about it again until last night. When I was writing this down before I was watching it, I was like, holy shit, we're about to watch a good film. I was like, it suddenly got really excited. I was like, oh yeah, finally.
I try not to. I think neither of us, we really talk about it at all. Yeah. Especially once we've watched it. I think occasionally there'll be like a message like, okay, or like, that was interesting, or like,
yeah, we try and save anything worthwhile for this.
Yeah, I mean, even really, when we start recording, I have no idea how you feel about a film, which is quite good, really. I think that's kind of the point. But yeah, anything else there, or should we do a bit of our thoughts of going into it? We kind of just did that, didn't we?
Yeah, let's just go straight into the film with its 5 minutes of opening titles to start with.
Yeah, there's one of the first scenes that you see is very intricate painting, which is on the point of counterfeiting and stuff like that.
I didn't even think obviously it was called the counterfeiter, but I didn't really think about what sort of counterfeiting.
Yeah, and you can't really tell initially.
Basically, it's really, really close up. Like you can even see like the indentations of the paper. And they're really, really like fine pen that he's like drawing.
Which I think is like a bit of something, like something from a book or something, isn't it?
I think it's been smuggled in a book, but it's like a really fine point.
And he's getting the paint from paint chippings on the walls, isn't he? He's like not melting them, but like watering them down.
Yeah, and he's doing this tiny. Turns out that he's making a stamp.
Yes,
which makes it even more like this. The detail.
Yeah, there's a lot of scenes like that, and we'll get into some of them a little bit.
But straight away with this, I was like, this is fucking cool.
Yeah, there's some amazing sequences and close-ups of this kind of calligraphy style, close-up drawing, and I don't know if I imagine most of it was real. I know some of bits were probably done with mixtures of CG for stuff later on, but it's all like it's like expert.
It's so like precise and minute.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and it turns out that he's in a prison.
Guy in prison. The main guy, who's Lee Man.
Yeah. There's a guy going down the cells, asking if anyone's got any outgoing post, and he's $10, and I'll send you a post, basically.
That's it. Yeah.
So
he gets the guy across the cell
to be like crazy
to do like a big distract. He's like a scraggly old man who's in there for life. He says like, it doesn't matter, I'm in here for life.
Yeah.
He causes a fuss, and then he slips.
He puts this little stamp that he's been making on his letter.
Oh, because that's it. You pay for the stamp, isn't it, from the guy? So that's why he.
So he's made. Oh no, I think it's separate. I think you have to pay $10 just to send the
but it makes
letter.
sense that he didn't have a stamp anyway. So
he's stuck fine. He's got distracted, and then he's kind of dropped it into through the little hole where he gets his dinner.
Yeah,
he's dropped it into the mailbag.
Thing, yeah, and then we see almost immediately after he gets taken out of prison by some police,
before he's even taken a bite of his food, the police turn up and said, "We're taking you in. The Hong Kong police want you."
Yeah, it's to do with crimes that he's potentially committed or he's involved in.
Yeah,
it's a bit vague at the start.
They list like all these crimes, and like I've just written down lots of crimes.
Yeah, so I've got the same because they take him into like a briefing room, not a briefing room, like an interrogation room, and they put all the paperwork when someone's getting.
I think accused, it actually is a briefing room. It says on the door, briefing room.
It's a briefing room later, which kind of
I think it's the same room.
Either way, and there's a load of stuff which is actually we find out is all kind of foreshadowing for the film because it's listing out all these things like massacres and botched robberies and stuff.
Yeah.
And we soon find out that a lot of that is going to be told as flashbacks from Lee Man.
Basically, they say he's connected to this counterfeiting gang led by a mysterious character called the Painter, or just Painter.
Just Painter, they call him quite often.
Painter.
And everyone's dead in the gang apart from him and Painter. Lee Man and Painter.
And he kind of makes the point that like Painter doesn't leave any survivors.
Yeah.
If I talk to you, I'm dead.
Yeah, and there's a very dramatic bit where we see Chow Yun-fat in a policeman's uniform, and it's like a montage kind of bit of him sneaking around, and then he's suddenly going, Lee Man's going, he knows we're here or something, and then there's just a massive explosion.
Yeah.
And you think everyone's just died in the room. And I was thinking, right, okay, so Chow Yun-fat's going to be the main character, and this is just a guy who gets killed at the start. Yeah. And then we get the title, and then the rubble all just like goes backwards.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a cool effect. It just like... It like the rocks and stuff just lift back up, and they're all just like sitting there like normally,
just there like normal, yeah. And like, then I think the police lady, I can't remember. I think she's called Inspector Ho or something like that.
Yeah,
I don't know, sounds a bit.
I mean, I
the one lady policeman, and they called her Inspector.
It turns out this guy in prison's called Lee Man, and I found that funny.
But they keep talking about being the leading man as well. I don't know if that can't be on purpose.
But it was also just sounding like a superhero, like Lee Man.
Yeah. And and she's just the police officer in charge of the investigation. I think she's called Inspector Ho. She's just like, do you expect us to relieve that? Like, you're just saying this so that you don't have to help us with the investigation.
Yeah, and then they take him to a holding cell and give him some food. And
guy almost immediately punches. As soon as they put him in, he like smacks him in the head, doesn't he?
Yeah,
and then he bashes his head on the wall, and then they
give him food. Like, is he drugged? Because like they then drag him. I think
they might drug him because he's like half asleep when they
like drag him out the cell.
They basically take DNA evidence from him, from the blood and hair from him smacking his head, and they basically say that they're charging him with murder because the DNA matches.
Yeah, it matches like, these crimes they've listed.
Yes, sorry, all the different crimes they've picked up evidence, hair samples, whatever, and they're basically like, we got you, so you might as well kind of confess.
Yeah.
And then we get a lawyer come in. Is it a lawyer? The guy in the suit with the glasses?
Yeah, I've just written down...
There's a lot of characters in this film.
Oh, yeah.
And it gets to the point where I assumed things that turned out to be true, even though we're not supposed to know them. There's a couple of switcheroos and stuff later. I didn't realise that we weren't supposed to know.
But we'll get to that because I'm not sure exactly what you're referencing.
But like we turn out the police officer Ho, Inspector Ho,
is the
daughter of the chief.
Yeah.
And there's this lady who turns up in
like a very important looking woman.
Yeah, she's got very like fancy clothes. She's got like a Mac all done up, and like,
it's basically like
sunglasses.
we reject all this evidence.
Yeah,
like, it won't hold up.
Yeah, it's spotty evidence, I think he says. And there's a whole thing about a plea deal, basically.
Yeah,
I think that's what they call it.
And the inspector, they asked the woman why she's this important woman why she's interested, and she mentions that her fiance was killed by Painter.
Right.
And that's why she wants to kind of get down to the business of it.
Inspector Ho says, my fiance was killed as well. And that's how we met. So the two ladies met somehow because their fiancés were both killed by Painter.
Yeah.
They both got a vendetta. They both want to prosecute him.
And then we get our first flashback. I say first flashback, but it's not really a flashback as in most of the film is set back.
Yeah,
it's kind of like that with Deadpool, where like the whole film's technically on the highway, but the whole film is flashbacks going back and forth to.
That's it, and
so we get told this entire story, but it cuts between like the present day police stuff. Yeah.
So basically, Lee Man used to live in Canada. He was poor, and he used to live with Yoon Man, who's his girlfriend, or I imagine maybe wife. But I think they've just got the same surname.
Yeah.
And they're both painters. They're both very talented. She's more of a kind of expressionist, lots of colourful stuff.
And the big criticism of him is that he basically copies other greats.
Although it seemed like he was doing originals, but just using all the styles of like the four modern
criticism
masters, they said,
was that like he didn't have his own style. He just
So it was these incredibly intricate, mostly black and white or like single colour on white. Similar to the stamp that we see him doing, like a navy blue, very intricate, like almost like pointillism with like the dots kind of thing.
But basically, like none of their they're not being able to sell their paintings. So like the gas and the electricity,
they both
turned off at one point, and they've got a dealer they know called Lockman,
and he says to Yun that he'll kind of manage her and she can have a career. And Lee Man, our main character, overhears him kind of trashing his work kind of thing and saying he just copies,
whereas Yun's work is actually original and really good.
Yeah. And she says, I won't do it unless you take both of us.
Yeah.
And Lee Man's like, this is ridiculous. And then at the same time, he accepts an offer.
Later on that evening, he comes home and he's like, "Oh, it's all sorted. I spoke to Mr. Locke.
Yeah.
He sold all my paintings to the gallery.
Yeah.
And then like the lights come on, like as he's saying that, and he's like he's agreed that he'll buy all your paintings, basically. So we're in business.
Yeah.
Turns out he's bullshitting. She finds out because he leaves one of his paintings behind, and she goes to take it to the gallery, and none of his stuff's there. And she tracks him down, and he's been away for like a couple of days, I think. Just doing loads of copies of these like paintings, these old paintings.
And one of the ones that he does is, well, some of them are more modern ones, I think. But he does one from 1513 or something. Yeah, which is almost like a It's like a print kind of thing, isn't it? Like an early like engraving kind of print.
Because he talks about like it's hard finding this, like the reaction to the thing they're printing on with modern stuff.
He's like a real,
which kind of reminds me of Tenet with the whole faking paintings that stuff.
There's a lot of good scenes where he's talking about the intricacies of, different materials, and he's talking about because he was using a picture in a book of the original engraving, and he talks about you can tell that it's done this depth and the copper and
it
stuff
seems
like
that. He's like this fantastic artist who
almost like
doesn't have his own ideas,
as well, really, isn't it?
It's kind of like a musician that's like great in a cover band but doesn't have their own music.
Technically incredible, but just maybe isn't so like original, creative, on their own. And then shortly after this, he's introduced to painter Chow Yun Fat, because he buys this 1513 or whatever it is painting, and he's been told that it's the original, and he says, "Oh, I want to meet the painter," and the dealer's like, "You must be joking." And it's he's obviously twigged, like,
it's like, the painter died like 600 years ago, like.
And he's like, "Yeah, well, actually, I know this is a fraudulent one." And then we go to the art gallery. So Yun is having the successful...
It's a big display of all her paintings. I think they say like, but she's also sneakily put in the one Lee Man picture that we've seen,
which stands out because it's completely different to all of
hers. And all the rest are very colourful.
Very colourful, almost like, I don't know if they're watercolours or oil paints or whatever, but it's very kind of floral and stuff like that.
And then they make the point that every single picture has been sold except
she says to
his
him,
one.
She's like, oh, there's been some interest on yours. And he's like, but I've heard they're all sold apart from mine. So she's either bullshitting or like, even if there's offers, it's still not the same quality almost.
And then Painter gets there. Yeah. And it
starts off where he's kind of like, oh, it replicates the Four Masters. And then what does he say? He's like, why would I want to look at this garbage or something?
Yeah, it completely takes the piss. It's like, it's just a replica. Like, there's no originality.
I think he says like, life is terrible enough without having to look at this garbage or something like that.
And Yin then like throws like a glass of champagne in his face. And he runs, he leaves.
And he gets in his car. Yeah.
And Lee Man runs after him to apologise for Yun's behaviour. And he's like, well, actually, I came here to talk to you.
Yeah, and he's got the copy of the old painting in his car. And he's like, you painted this,
he's like, I'm into replicas.
And then he basically offers him a job. We don't know what it is. Lee Man assumes that it's
like copying
fraudulent paintings, stuff like that. There's a bit of a argument with Yun where she doesn't want him to do it. He kind of says that he's going to do it, and then he burns his painting really dramatically.
He's like, he has a cigarette in the gallery and then just puts the lighter down to his painting. Yeah. And you hear he like just walks out and Lockman just like, who burns their own paintings? And I was just like, you've literally spent like the first quarter of this film just like shitting on his painting.
And it's, and at that point we kind of see that those two are getting closer as well. The manager, is he called Lockman? Lockman, yeah.
He's also a man.
There's lots of people with the surname Man in this. And then we skip to they're driving, Painter and Lee Man, driving out into the countryside for some reason. I don't really know why, because it's just for this little bit here.
Yeah.
And he basically says, Lee Man says, and we saw this in the trailer actually, didn't we?
Yeah, he
says, what artwork do you want me to reproduce or something?
Yeah, and he's like, I want you to reproduce this, and pulls out $100 bill.
Yeah.
An American
dollar bill.
And he's like,
no.
No, I can't do that.
I won't get into that, blah, blah, blah. And then I think he goes back, Lee Man goes back to his old apartment and he sees the other two getting close, the manager and Yun. Yeah. And then he kind of realizes like, right, I've got to do it. And then he goes back again. It's quite a quick like turnaround.
Yeah, it's like you see Painter on a plane and he comes and sits next to him. Yeah, and he's like, you come round. He was like, I was actually taking you to the airport and decided to.
I just realised he says the world's favourite painting. Oh no, that's a bit later on. He basically says the super bill that they're going to make is going to be the world's favourite painting. Which is quite a cool little line.
Basically Yun has left Lee. Yes. So he's decided to join Painter in this kind of fun counterfeiting project.
Yeah, and at this point, it's before it kind of gets a bit darker. It is quite like a fun kind of thing, isn't it? You know, this kind of sequence from now on is quite like
it's almost like an Ocean's 11.
Like a heisty kind of thing. There's some cool bits kind of coming up, but
then on the plane they get introduced to Painter's crew,
which I didn't realize there's anyone else there at first. But
I don't think there was.
I think it's
specifically
like
meant to be
like, oh yeah, Uncle Yam's here.
So you've got Uncle Yam is the plate maker. So when they're replicating the things, he designs the plates so they can do it. You've got one who's the admin woman.
Oh yeah,
who does the admin side, and you've got Bobby who does logistics and security.
And there's also Brother 4 or something.
And Brother 4,
is he the one without the arm?
Yeah,
I didn't notice until like way into the film that he's got loads of scars.
He loses his arm later in the film.
Does he?
Yeah, we'll get to that in the forest after the big action scene.
Oh, because the timeline is different, isn't it? Because we do get a bit of timey-wimey stuff.
But this is there's Brother 4 who we don't know his specific job.
No.
But he's the 6th member of the crew.
Yeah. And he's the kind of most like rough around the edges one. The rest of them are kind of normal.
Although Bobby's kind of a bit like
Bobby's a bit sleazy,
but because he's logistics and security.
Yeah, right, okay. And then it kind of, so just to pause, kind of, I thought up to this point was okay, kind of dragged a little bit.
Yeah,
this is the part I think
it's all kind of
I had to pause because I had to sort stuff out in the house, but I think I kind of lost the flow. But this is about half an hour of the film, isn't it?
Yeah, probably. So it's kind of it's a 2 hour 10 minute film, so it's still very. But I thought
this bit for me was when it started getting going.
So then we get like a montage.
The bit with the dollar bill bit is so good,
so good. Like
they talk about the new $100 bill that came out. I think it was 2017 or 18.
Is it Ben Franklin?
Benjamin Franklin.
His face is bigger.
Yeah, it's a different painting than the other one.
So like the small details on like his face is like different. He's got United States of America on his collar, like smaller than a millimeter tall,
microscopic. And they talk about like the Moir effect. So like there's multiple lines. If you look at it from a different angle, it has that funny like not shimmering effect, like a wavy optical illusion thing. It's like if you don't do it very precisely, you'll get that effect, and you need to not have it.
Yeah, it really builds up of a mix of like art and science to do, and like it kind of then goes back again to the stamp of like this minute details that they need to get absolutely perfect.
Yeah,
and we get like Uncle Yam and Lee just spending seemingly ages doing all these. Yeah. At first, I was when they were doing this, I was like, "Oh my god! If they do this, it's going to take them ages to make these $100 bills."
Because he's doing, and it's I've written here calligraphy porn because it's literally just like it's just this amazing like it's like the scene at the start, but even better.
Yeah,
and it's just and
they've got like blown up sections of the dollar, and they're making them bigger than an actual scale, but they're kind of practicing the minute details. To get it perfect.
Although thinking about it, why don't they just take a photo and blow it up? Oh, because they have to have the detail in there. Is that it? Yeah, okay.
So and then they kind of cut together all the little bits they've done and put them together to make one big $100 bill.
Yes.
And like they're like,
and then they're like, this is amazing. Perfect. Yeah, it's so good. It's like they're like a collage thing, isn't it? Because I was thinking, because they need to do each bit multiple times to get it right. So they've taken like the best, 4 quarters or whatever.
Yeah,
it's more than
it's
that.
Lots of different sections. They've got like the Ben Franklin bit, the 100 bit, the
it's
dollar
all
bit.
the different little bits.
Yeah, and put them together, and it looks really cool.
And that's like the first like success kind of thing. They're like, smashed it.
It's not really clear on how long they've been doing that.
I think the whole thing is at least you know what though, because it started in the 90s, I think, because he says that he met Yoon in the 80s, and then it was they've been living together for 10 years.
I think they mentioned at one point from like the whole time he's with Painter covers like 2 years,
right? And then they hide out for a bit at one point.
Yeah,
so,
but that's getting ahead of myself. I think this montage bit is like 2-3 weeks of
there's a couple of weeks skipping kind of bits.
Yeah, and then
there's a bit where they're celebrating the win, where they're going to have some champagne or whatever. And there's a painting on the table. Yeah. And they're all making bets about
whether it's real or fake.
Fraudulent art. And they're like, this is our hobby.
And they're all putting money on it being fake.
Like 5,000.
And then Lee Mann comes in and he goes, it's real.
He puts down $20 because he's poor.
Yeah. And he's like, they're both real. And then he explains like.
And there's a third real one as well.
It's about old Chinese paintings. The way they'd paint, you could strip off the top layer and you'd have a perfect replica underneath where the ink would have gone through.
He says basically, you I haven't got it here, but it's some sort of Chinese watercolor experts or something like that. Yeah. And he says, you can basically get 3 copies, and they're very slightly different. And he said, this is probably the middle one, or this is the bottom one because it's slightly darker or something like that.
And then because of that, they figure out this is how we put the watermark on the dollar bill.
Which I thought was kind of obvious to do anyway, but
I think they were just thinking on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
But then they figured if we got 3 sheets of paper, put the watermark in the middle one and put them together, then bam, watermark is.
There's a bit of a coincidence, not to skip ahead too much. When they find the paper, Painter's like, and it's exactly a third of a dollar's width. Like, it's a little bit like.
But it's kind of very made out that like this is like an art form. Yeah. Like the counterfeited and replication.
And then we get the bit where they're doing the plates, and there's another montage of that. In that bit, we see there's a bit where two of the guys, I think it's Bobby and Brother Ewan, are playing like a game where they're throwing screws from the roof.
Yeah, they're sitting on the roof.
It's all like about like precision, and it's all kind of the same. Like,
and is this when Lee asks Uncle Yam about Painter?
Yeah, so we got a little bit earlier where he first offers in the job, and he says he's the third generation. This is Painter of counterfeiters.
Yeah,
no one's ever gone to jail. They've got these rules. If you follow them, you know,
no one
I think they
caught.
mention it that one of the rules is don't ever spend the money.
Don't spend the money.
And they sell it wholesale, don't they? They don't.
Yeah, and like we'll get it, but okay, we might as well mention it. I don't think I understand how counterfeit money is sold because like they go to these later on.
They say about the ratio that they buy them later.
Yeah, but I don't understand it because like okay. Like if you're selling
why would the person buy?
Yeah, if you're selling $100 bill, how much do you sell that for?
Well, they say later on that it's 1 to 20.
But what way round?
The person buying it pays less. So but you're selling paper, so it's fine for you to sell it for
But you're basically selling a perfect $100 bill for $5.
Because if you spend it, you're opening yourself up to being caught.
Yeah.
It's to avoid... It's the same with like if someone produced drugs, they could sell it directly to people on the street, but then they're putting themselves out. Right. If they're good at making it, they're not necessarily good at the next part down. Like these guys, although
like Breaking Bad,
although it turns out that they have quite a lot of criminal aspects to them, certain members of the gang, which aren't necessarily clear.
But I was like, how do you make money?
So because they've got later on, was it 500 tons of paper or 50 tons of paper or something crazy? The amount that costs is still, even if they sold it for half,
it's not thinking about the money they've made as actual money.
No, it's just selling it as
a product. We built this stuff, we made this product, and we're selling it.
It's still not ever going to approach how much it costs for what they're selling it for.
I was just thinking, I can't. Maybe it's my innocent non-criminal mind.
But the other thing as well, like people always talk about inflate. What was it? I can't remember the word now. What's it called when you just flood the overprinting money and stuff like that? Is inflation? It causes inflation. Yeah. Second guessing.
Like,
but surely
1920s, 1930s Germany.
But surely this would really affect inflation without anyone realizing as well, because they're putting millions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars into the.
I guess economy. A few rich people having a few extra $100 million doesn't make too much difference.
Well, yeah, because they're probably hoarding a lot of it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Although they would be, if they were smart, they'd be spending the counterfeit money and holding on to the real money.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, because the reason they want to offload it is because it's technically worthless.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not just hot criminal property. Hot criminal property in your area. It's not just like...
I haven't had that ad before.
Like a hot person with like a burglar's mask on.
Yeah. It'd be like one of those like sexy Halloween burglar costumes.
Ooh. But yeah, they want to offload it because obviously they're breaking the law by having it. But also it's not actually worth anything. So anything they get for it that's more than the ratio.
Yeah.
Because they are still getting more. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. But
yeah, I guess it makes sense. And yeah. But anyway, the next bit they go to Eastern Europe.
Yes.
To buy...
Yes, they need an industrial printer because they've got the plates and they've got their little hand winding printer. They can do like one sheet of, what is it, like 5x5 bills or whatever. Maybe not even that.
But they want a printer so they can do.
They want like a newspaper printer almost, basically.
Yes, they go to Eastern Europe, buy this cheap printer, but then they kind of say the one problem we've got now is the paper.
Yeah, because they lined out the issues at the start, and we see a bit where the admin lady, is she basically got the anti-counterfeiting pens.
Yeah,
she's drawing them on all different paper
because the pen changes color.
It changes to yellow on this specific starch-free paper,
which is held by the American government.
It's like a Federal Reserve type thing. And they're trying to find that, and this is one of the last pieces they need.
Yeah,
there's another bit.
It's the penultimate thing they need. The penultimate piece of the puzzle. They like how we need to figure out how we can.
So what she's doing is just buying loads of different types of paper and just trying it on all. That's like her part of it, which is
it's like the most tedious.
It's a bit of a reductive kind of thing as well, like admin as well for like the lady in the gang. It's a bit like, Yeah, and then just after they buy the printer on like a lot in Eastern Europe, it's going to be sold for scraps. What is it? Painter has the phone book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he gives it to Lee and was like, here's a solution.
And they're like, what are you talking about? And then he just draws the line on it and it's yellow.
Yeah, it turns out phone books use this starch-free paper.
It's something like the excess that they don't use for bills is sold to a company or a federal, because it's, I don't know how it works.
Phone book company.
And then they have this little thing, this little act that they do.
Lee and Uncle go.
No, it's Painter.
Is it Painter?
Yeah, that's what's even weirder. So he's got the crutches and the hat and the glass and like these giant milk bottle glasses on, and he's like, just get into the.
They go to this phone book company.
Yeah.
And they basically say, like, can we have some of your paper with...
But Painter's like doing this like really over exaggerated like stammer, and he's like got these crutches,
like a shaky
and he's
old
like
man.
Really, and then and
they basically
Lee's got like a really big like middle parting, like a real nerd haircut.
Yeah, and they say they're from a Hong Kong charity making school books.
Yeah,
and the guy's like, we're a multi-million-dollar company,
like
they
only selling like massive bulk amounts.
Yeah, and he goes to walk away, and then Lee's like, wait, we sell school books to kids.
I think he
in
does comic
Africa
books as well, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, and comic books,
school books and educational comic books.
Yeah,
he says,
Africa.
How many orphans do you think there are in Africa?
Yeah. So then they've got the paper and they buy like a shit ton,
500 tons. I've got here.
Yeah.
And then Painter's really pissed off, and he's like, I think because they didn't mean to buy that much. Yeah. Maybe.
And he's like,
he says, he says to Lee, don't die until you've used it all up. I think that's the first kind of indication that he's a bit sinister, is it?
Yeah. Then they start printing, and we get kind of all the machines working and pressing down like the 100 part, the Ben Franklin part, the dollar part. I don't know why there are only 3 parts of a dollar bill that I can remember, but those 3 parts and the rest of it.
I don't know where's this. Oh, there it is. I got confused about the order of it. Yeah. There's a cool bit like that. And then they're in a car together again.
Painter and Lee.
Yeah. And Lee says, I want to leave after this bit or something, doesn't he?
And
he says it a couple of times.
Painter kind of has said a couple of times, like, once we do this, we can go back and win Yun back for you.
Oh, like, that's what he's saying. Yeah, he's saying
that's
you can
the
go
end
back
goal.
To your girlfriend.
We can win back Yun. And at this point is when they go to her house and drop off a key that he's got for some reason.
See, I've got here go back to girlfriend, but I don't know what I meant by that.
Yeah, that, and like Painter opens her mail when Lee's like, don't do that. And
that's it.
He leaves like a key on her table and they leave.
I think we see the program for her gallery. We see that a couple of times. I think that's one of the bits.
I think that's the package that Painter opens, and Painter's like determined for Lee to get you, because he's got this whole thing of like every important man has got a strong woman behind them.
Yeah, and then he says to him like, "What about you?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm special and different.
I'm unique.
I don't need a woman to, you know."
So yeah, then they're driving along this road and they suddenly stop.
Yeah.
And Painter passes Lee like a bulletproof jacket and is like, put this on. And he's like, what? And he gets out the car, puts like a mask on and pulls out a gun. And there's like a lorry of like hay stacks on the back.
Yeah.
And they go and they just start shooting. And like
it's just
Lee's like, what? And suddenly they're like in a robbery and like Bobby and Brother Thor are there.
Yeah, they all kind of turn up and there's a guy, one of them sniping, aren't they?
Yeah, I think that's
Brother Thor maybe is like sniping. They've all got like ski masks on, like balaclavas.
Yeah.
It's just like they're brutally just like shooting people and stuff.
Like, and the police turn up and they're just like, and like this whole time Lee's just like shaking.
Yeah,
and,
he's just like on the floor, like what the fuck? And then he has to put the jacket on. I think he puts his mask on after a second as well.
Yeah.
And then they open the back of this van. Is it the same van or is it a different van?
It's the same van because this like haystack has blocked the road.
That's right.
And this van is behind, and they've kind of tied up all the security after shooting them. They've kind of got them all set on the floor next to the van, and they open the back, and it's loads of barrels of ink.
That's it. Although it looks like there's loads, and then they say there's only 2.
Oh, because
he, okay,
yeah. Because the final piece of the puzzle is the ink that goes on the
Colour
100.
changing ink.
Colour changes, so when you turn it at an angle, it changes
it's like
colour.
iridescent is what you'd call it in some
and this is the only ink that does it. They open up, they start loading up. They get like 2 barrels onto the back of their other van.
Yes.
And then there's a policeman in the back of the van.
And Lee Man just freezes up, and this policeman's got his gun to him.
Yeah.
And then what happens there? Then
he shoots.
I think Painter sees from behind loading stuff up.
Yeah.
And then Lee kind of jumps out the way.
I think one of them gets shot, maybe Bobby.
Yeah.
I think Bobby gets shot, and Painter just unloads these like 2 machine guns into the back of this van.
He's just like, oh no, because Painter gets shot in his bulletproof vest, and he's like, how dare you shoot me? And he just goes like completely insane, shoots like crazy into the van. Yeah, and you're right. And the rest of the barrels get just like perforated.
Yes, they can't use them. And then we quickly cut back to current day in the police station, where basically they're doing some more interrogation. This all stuff, he's in an interrogation room and retelling the story. So that's how it's set up. So every time it goes back, he's sitting in this like interview room saying what's happened, and they kind of goes back and they say they've got a name for Painter, which was, I wrote it down here somewhere. Oh yeah, En Fuk Sung.
Right.
They're like, we've got a name, and he's like, okay.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But they're kind of just talking about this robbery.
Yeah.
Of the ink.
And then they all kind of get in their getaway car, and there's some discussion about like, oh, if it wasn't for your temper, this kind of stuff wouldn't happen. And as they're about to drive away, Painter's like, hang on one sec, goes back to the van, plants something there, and then walks like 2 meters away and then blows up.
I think it's a bit further than that.
Yeah, it looks like he's right next to the explosion. And just basically just fucks it all up.
Yeah, blows up the
leaving
van,
no trace,
leaving no survivors.
And I think
as well.
killing the other people that were still there, because I think they tie some people up next to the van or something, don't they?
Yeah,
the people who they didn't kill in the robbery.
They're just there.
And then it kind of cuts to so that's in Canada.
Yeah,
because hence they need the American dollar. Stuff. And then there's Canadian police later on, like looking at the scene and stuff. And there's just like a Chinese actor in the Canadian police who's just like got a Chinese accent.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is like
you
what
laugh.
you see in like an American film when there's a Chinese actor who is there to get the, appeal.
But it makes you laugh when when they do like an American accent, it just sounds so off.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's because we're used to watching like Hollywood films.
Well, that's the thing, and a lot of people who learn English from American films have like a slightly strange mixed accent anyway.
It
like
makes you think that
foreign exchange students in England, a lot of them will have a slight twang to it because they've learned it from.
Just makes you think like if you're in like Hollywood films, when people do speak other languages, that's probably what it sounds like to people who are natural in that language.
Like you hear about things like, what is it in Narcos? He's supposed to, his accent's Brazilian, isn't it?
Yeah. There's also what was that? Dances with Wolves.
Right. Yeah.
The Kevin Costner film. Yeah. They had a in the, I think it's this Lakota Sioux, which is their Native Americans. You know how different languages have like feminine and masculine?
Oh, right.
They have it, but women say certain words and men say certain words.
Right.
And the person that taught them the Sioux language was a woman. So all these men are talking in Native American language as a woman throughout the entire film. And apparently Native American men found it hilarious because there's all these men just talking as if they're women throughout the whole film.
Would the person teaching them not have picked up on that?
I guess they weren't like... It wasn't their first language. They'd learnt it.
Right, okay, yeah.
Because they learnt it as a woman, they then taught it as they say it.
That's really silly.
Right. But yeah, anyway, there's a bit where this Canadian Chinese policewoman, she meets a guy and she's like, can I borrow your lighter? Yeah. And she lights her cigarette and then gets a phone call, walks off. And I was like, you bastards, you stole his lighter.
Yeah, because this is still in the flashback. So is it the same cop who was there?
Yeah. So this is
he's a Canadian cop. He's a Chinese Canadian. No, the guy is the same guy from the scene, the crime scene.
Yes,
He's about to get his federal license. The guy,
yeah,
says.
And the woman is from the current day.
And she is the current day. She's Inspector Ho, the daughter,
who's lost her fiance to
so
Painter.
She's lost her fiance. Immediately, I'm like, this guy's gonna die.
Yeah,
you can see there's a bit of a spark, not just literally about the cigarette lighter.
because he then goes in and gets introduced to all the police people there, and
she's like, "Can I have my license?" Oh, he says, like, "Can I have my license?"
And she's like, "Oh, yes, here you go."
And at that point, because in the present day, she's got a very like severe haircut, short hair. She's pale,
quite stern,
quite drawn, and like very like masculine kind of clothing. She's very like business. In the past, she's got still short hair, but a bit more of like a stylish kind of cut,
a bit more flowy.
Yeah, she's got a bit more like stylish kind of feminine clothing on, and the implication, I suppose, is that she's become like this cold hard bitch from like losing the love of her life.
But then we get these two are undercover on a boat.
Yeah, there's there's surveillance. There's a surveillance montage.
Oh,
and we see this guy sees Uncle Yam in Canada. Like in a shop looking at clocks, which comes
he
back
runs
a
like
bit
an
later.
antique clock shop.
Yeah, no, he's buying from it because that's what comes up later. But so this guy spots that, and they've got their camera lenses, they're doing bugging and all this kind of stuff.
Classic surveillance stuff.
Yeah, and then it's been a year of him undercover when they do the boat thing.
Yeah, so he goes onto a boat to buy some counterfeit money. There's some contacts there that know Painter, and it's like these two classic like kind of gangster guys.
That's the guy. That's our guys, isn't it?
Bobby and Brother Four.
Yes,
but not
the present day. Not
I mean, not Painter Lee.
Oh yeah,
or,
Painter Lee or the lady, aren't there?
One.
Yeah. So it's the two gangstery ones.
Yeah, and they've got this boat full of like women in bikinis.
Yeah.
So like, oh, we've heard he likes women or something.
And they're like, oh, Painter told us to have some fun. Have you got anything against fun? They're kind of being quite like macho and threatening to him. And they try something. One of them tries something with Inspector Ho, who's also turned up to be there undercover. Yeah, even though she's not supposed to be. Is that right?
Yeah, and the other undercover person's like, what the fuck are you doing here?
Yeah. And he kind of shows that he's also macho and
it's kind of like these they'll have fun drinks, and then I think it's Brother Four pulls out a gun and puts it on the table. And it's like it's very, very tense.
Yeah, it's a very threatening.
And then the undercover cop guy is kind of wary, but he's like, hey, I want to buy some counterfeit money.
Yeah.
And he's like, let's party.
Yeah.
And they say let's party in English.
Yeah, let's party. And then when he tries something with let's say the girlfriend, I suppose, Inspector Ho, he like steps in the way, and then he pushes her down the slide and then slides down into the water with her.
Yeah, and then when they land in the water, another boat drives past.
And they like throw something, don't they?
Yeah, a woman says like he'll call you, and it's a phone in like a plastic
bag thing, like a zip bag.
And he's like, oh, okay.
So he's made the deal. He's one step closer kind of thing. And we don't find out immediately, but this is out of time with the rest of the things, don't we? And that's the only really bit of those guys we get until a bit later on.
So we then go back to current day again.
And this
interview
is when I think we're supposed to realise then that the lady who's dressed up fancy is Yoon.
Yeah, I think we already knew that.
Yeah, I didn't realise that at the start. I was like, who the fuck is this lady? Because the thing is, although Yoon is a character throughout, we don't see her much. And the times we see her, she from the start onwards, once she leaves him, she's always in the distance, or she's facing the other way, or when she's in the interview room, she's got sunglasses on. Yeah. And this is why the thing that happens later on was not a surprise to me, because I couldn't fucking remember what she looked like.
So Yoon, who his previous love, is the woman who's got him out and is basically saying
with the lawyer who's like sitting in the room for some reason. I don't know why she's allowed to be in the interrogation room, but she's
because she's rich and important.
Yeah,
and she kind of says like, "Oh, Painter must have had a really big impact on you."
Yeah,
and he's like, "Yeah." Like kind of father figure stuff we're talking about. That's what I was
thinking. Yeah. And then they've got the ink. There's another printing montage.
Another really, really cool printing montage. Like really these montages that I absolutely loved. Like,
yeah, I think that when I was thinking with CG, some of the close-ups of stuff getting stamped, I think is CG, but a lot of the other stuff, the calligraphy and stuff, which is mainly early on, but I think that's...
Actually, I was going to save it for the end for trivia,
Oh,
but director Felix Chung actually bought a real 7-ton currency press
Cool.
that cost 100,000 Hong Kong dollars, which is about $9,000 for us.
Yeah.
But it had to be reported with the American currency. I think it's the Hong Kong government or the American government to say he had this. It had to be registered.
Okay.
So he bought a real currency printing machine to do all this stuff with. So there is a real machine.
That's cool.
But had to kind of register it so they knew that like
they
could keep an eye on it and weren't actually making counterfeit money. But like it's all pretty legit.
That's cool. That's cool.
But
That's really cool. I think I saw somewhere they presented when they did the premiere, they did something to do with something at the Hong Kong Police Department. And I think they had loads of money they used as props there or something. I don't know. Maybe I'll look it up later. But that's really cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, after this little printing montage, Lee is quite concerned about murder.
Yeah, because that for us now, this is almost directly after the
ink robbery. And he's like, I don't want to be anything to do with murder. Like, I'm happy doing this counterfeiting, but murder's something else.
And he says, doesn't he here, I'll find a replacement ink so you don't have to do the robbery again. And after that, I'm out. It's very like famous last words.
Yeah.
Well, not yet. I'm out after this job kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like I'm leaving.
And then they're packing
like
up these...
Painter's not very happy about him leaving, but it's kind of like
he seems to be like, okay.
They pack it and then we get a call.
They've got loads of cases and then they put it
into a plane.
And they're just flying this
bit I thought was I literally wrote Oceans
cool.
there.
Yeah.
All very like cool going. And they go to, I wrote down.
I've got it as well.
Juarez, Havana, Bengaluru, Dublin and Paxa.
Yeah.
So all these like global places around the world where they go in, meeting gangsters and selling their counterfeit money. Yeah. And it's like the business is working, they're successful, they're earning all this money and everything's going well.
Yes. And then there's quite a cool bit here where they're celebrating, I think they're in Paxa, and which is in Laos, I think, is it?
Yeah. You're going to make me look it up now because I've just completely drawn a blank.
And I think I looked it up last night. I can't remember. But yeah, and Painter's in his hotel room, like he's showing off, isn't he? He's doing like pull-ups, and the guy's like, "Boss, you're so cool," and he's like, "Yeah, I'm cool."
And then there's
beeping from outside.
Yeah, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And Lee and I think Uncle Yam are like looking at this car,
and it's got this like. That's why I was thinking iridescent paint.
Yeah, because you see cars like that, they look pretty cool, so and they're looking at it from different angles. And they kind of like, shit, like, what if this is our solution? We'll use what they use to paint these cars. And this is all
done quite well because this is all done... They don't say that at all at that bit.
No.
Because you kind of think, right, because it's a greenish colour. They're holding up a swab thing to it, aren't they?
Yeah.
And then we get a bit where this is the last... I think this is the deal in Paxa, or this might be somewhere else.
Yeah, and Painter's having like this really important meeting with a guy who works for General.
Yes, a general, which...
I think it's
like I think it's a weird militia kind of thing. Yeah. It's not like an official thing.
And it's all going very well.
And the general's counterfeiting expert is a lady called Cao Xing.
Yes.
And she is quite timid and she's like effectively she's like the Lee man to the paint. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Very kind of quiet, kind of been dragged into this criminal career.
And Lee Man is like being classic Lee Man. He's being all like nervous and walking along with a big load of paint.
He comes like running in.
Well, yeah, he comes running in, I think, to show Painter this paint. And then he trips over and it goes all against this glass. It's between him and Cao Xing. And then they just like lock eyes and all this paint's dribbling down. It's like this very like meet cute, like romantic, like.
And then like the general's guy and shouting leave because they're like, this is probably a good time to leave.
Yes.
We'll go. And
and then Painter freaks out and is like, what are you doing? Here. And then there's the cool bit where, is it Uncle Yam or him? They flick the light.
It's like a hanging light behind them. As it swings on the ink, you see the color changing and they're all like, wow.
And he's like, oh, we got it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then they talk about it and he says it's old NASA paint they used to use for windows or something so that it would change color or something like that. Didn't really go into it. And then it was sold to a car company and has been used as that since. And
this they're then going along to this other meeting. On the way, Painter tells Lee that he's bought him a house for him and Yun.
It's like a resort. It's it's like a mansion in the countryside, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really?
And like gives him the keys and he's like, when we're done, you're going to be rich, basically.
And I think this is supposed to be somewhere kind of Thailand, like Laos kind of area.
Yeah.
It's the Golden Triangle, they say at some point, which is that kind of Southeast Asia kind of area.
And they turn up to this like barracks almost.
Yeah.
But it's all like made of like bamboo and sticks.
Yeah, lots of guys in like khaki, machine guns. There's a pickup with a machine gun on the back, like a big turret thing.
And they meet General.
Well, just before, Painter gives Lee Man something and he grips onto it and it's a detonator.
Yeah, and he's like, let go when I tell you.
Let go when I tell you. And Painter's like, Lee Man's immediately like, fuck. And the stakes kind of get raised immediately.
Yeah.
And then this kind of confrontation with the general.
Yeah, well, they have this Painter and General have this like sit down. It's all very friendly chat. Yeah. And General's like, I'll pay you like a shit ton of money for your crew to stay here, teach my guys how you do it.
6 months, and we teach, which is obviously against what they want to do because they're the source of it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he says, because he turns out the General knew Painter's dad.
Yeah.
So we find out, that's what we found out from Uncle Yam earlier, because Lee Man asked if the thing about no one ever going to jail was true. And he says, yes. But Painter's dad got killed by Russians on a bad deal.
Yeah.
And then the general said, they're like, oh, your dad would have been proud. And he's like, your dad would have taken this deal.
Yeah.
And Painter's like, I don't think that's true because you hired the Russians to kill my dad.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, and then he's kind of arguing, and one of the general's men puts a gun to Painter's head.
Yeah, and they say like, "Oh, Lee Man is the brain, is the like talent. We don't need Painter," kind of thing.
And then he's like,
let go,
and he's like hesitant for ages.
Oh no, because we see that Painter's got all loads of bombs in his jacket.
Yeah,
so he opens his jacket threateningly. And we think, obviously, you let go of the detonator, it'll blow them all up in there.
Yeah.
And when he finally lets go
I've written down here, big boom.
Yeah, it's a big boom, and it's the car that they came in blows up instead.
And it literally like throws them across the room.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that shot at the start of the film with the police station.
Yes.
Everything's just kind of falling apart. Everyone's
all there's splinters and shit everywhere.
Yeah. And then like, here's where we get our
this is the big action scene. And this is where we see Chow Yun-fat, aged 64 at this point,
look fucking awesome,
like back to his roots of being like a fucking badass. He's like immediately gets
two guns. He's
grappling like John Wick style stuff,
three people, like flipping one person over, punching another, shooting people whilst like strangling a guy, then hits
gets
him,
the double pistols.
All while Lee's just like hiding on the floor like scared.
I've got here, Painter is a fucking hero. Dual wielding, smashing it.
Yeah, and like he's just got
and
to shoot.
There's a bit where he's almost a bit overwhelmed, and then suddenly just a rocket shoots out of nowhere.
Yeah,
blows everything up.
Yeah, a bunch of soldiers have come around and surrounded them, and then this rocket launcher. I think it's either Brother Four, Bobby.
It's one of the other two guys is outside shooting.
Yeah, and then a car comes down, and because all these buildings and stuff are made on like sticks, it's just plundering through these things.
And there's a cool shot where a rocket goes right, because Lee Man's like underneath the building, under the stilts, isn't he, like cowering, and a rocket just like goes straight past his head, and he's just like, oh. And then Painter's got 2 AKs, and he's just like wielding, just like crazy.
Yeah, and they're all just like going mad. And then
this is when, without spoiling it for the audience, this is when something in that description kind of triggered in my head, and I thought, I think I might know what's going on here.
Okay, won't say anything yet. Also, during these explosions, Su Ching has because she's been caught up in like a fire and is terrified.
I think she's trapped underneath rubble, and her back is like on fire. And Lee Man spots her, and he and that's around the same time. I think it's either Bobby. I think it's Brother Four goes run into a forest after these soldiers. That bit, and they shoot. And he goes down holding his arm where it's missing. And in front of him, you see like his forearm. Right, okay. You literally...
because I saw it and I was like, has this guy always been missing an arm?
Yeah,
but then you see his foot because they've shot.
So that's the revelation almost, that the boat scene is after this. Yeah.
So they've shot.
But then the grenade, doesn't that blow everyone up? Because he then pulls a grenade and I thought he blows himself up. But it can't be because he survived.
Yeah.
So maybe he throws it like a bit away from him. Or maybe he got fucked up by the grenade.
So that's when I realised that boat scene was in the future.
Which is quite a cool bit. A bit like what we were talking about with Dunkirk earlier, actually.
This is quite like a Christopher Nolan film.
Yeah, this is kind of what I was thinking at the start. Like, a lot of the filmmaking, I think some of the pacing is a bit questionable. But that's something we can talk about.
Yeah. But I think like the plot and like these timey-wimey, twisty-turnies is very
much that kind of thing.
And then there's a car comes down with like a gunner on the top.
And it's the general, isn't it?
Yeah. And he's coming down and Painter's got like a shotgun.
Well, he goes to shoot Painter and one of the other gang members goes in front.
Yeah.
And he gets like shot a load of times but survives. So I think it's Bobby and the other guy are both like fucked up, but they're alive. Kind of
then Painter like jumps out this window, shoots the gunner, the general.
Yeah.
Before he's hit the ground, reloads and shoots the driver. And then the car's like coming towards him, and he shoots again and shoots the front wheel.
The car just like flips up
and turns over him. And I was just like, "Fuck, that's cool."
But then the general's still alive, and then he goes over and like executes him.
Yeah,
it's very cool. Yeah, that's. I think that's.
It was a very fun action
Probably one
scene.
of my favourite scenes. From the whole thing.
And they've taken Su Ching.
Then they blow up the whole. Yeah, they take Su Ching. A load of them are injured, and then they drive away, and then they detonate explosives. The whole place just completely blows up.
Yeah, and then Painter gives. They're now back at their home or whatever. Painter gives Su Ching a new passport.
Yes.
With the name Yun Man on it.
Yes.
And Lee's like, what the fuck are you doing?
So this is when I got confused, okay? Because they say, oh, you were all burned up. Because you see earlier, right after the incident, when they're driving away, she's got like bandages over her face. You can see she was burned. And we can see that she's just had some sort of plastic surgery at this point with the passport. And when they said that she was called Yun Man, and she says, like, she's admiring her face, I thought that she'd been given Yun Man's face.
No, she has.
No, because when it shows it later, it's a different actress. So we're not supposed to realize yet that it's two different people. So Ao Ching's actress is not the same actress as Yun Man's.
Yeah, but she's supposed to look like exactly like her.
No,
because later on she goes to the art gallery and looks at the picture and is like, oh, I get it now.
But we get the revelation later. We're not supposed to know yet. Because they changed the actress in the flashbacks.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We both.
No, you're right.
This is what I mean. Because with Yun Man, we only see her right at the start.
Yeah.
And then we don't see her again. So when she's remarking about her face and we see that she changed her name,
let's save that for when we get to it.
Together almost. Yeah, okay.
So basically, Lee's annoyed that Painter's given her a passport of Yun Man as her name because he's like, that's a bit rude and
then we do go to the art gallery and she's there with Painter and Lee Man and she's looking at this lovely photograph of the real Yun Man and she says, oh, this is why you can't look at me, kind of thing. But we're supposed to think at that point, oh, because you've got the same name, this is your ex-girlfriend, blah blah blah.
She gets annoyed and goes off, and then Yun Man's walking across like a top balcony bit.
And before that, Painter says that he's bought all her paintings. She's going to be really happy with you.
Yeah, but she walks past with Lokma and they've announced they're getting married.
Yes.
And he's like, what? And he like storms off and Painter kind of waves at Yun Man and gives like a knowing smile.
Yeah. And
then
we're on a boat again. There's lots of bits on boats. And Lee Man says he's going to leave with the new Yun Man, which is Ao Ching. Yeah. He's like, we're out of here. We're going to go to the resort. I've bought my plane tickets. And Painter's like, I already knew that
he already knew
plane tickets.
And they kind of have an argument, but then he kind of like, okay, that's fine. Kind of accepts it.
Yeah.
And then just at the end of that kind of argument and discussion, they go past the boat from before.
Yes.
And
that's the bit where one shouts out.
And throws, and you see the police detectives,
the two policemen in
the water, and you're like, oh yeah, that's the scene from earlier.
So this is the bit up. So that now we're in chronological order again.
Yeah.
And then we see a bit about
They're back at the factory.
No, it's on the boat. Painter is asking the two rough boys about if they think the undercover cop is trustworthy.
Yeah.
And they say, who's vouching for him? And they say, oh, it's Uncle Yam's old client. Yeah. And then Painter's immediately suspicious.
He kind of has a flashback of seeing somebody
with the clock shot bit. He was there and he saw the cop looking at Uncle Yam. So when the surveillance montage, he saw that. And
then they're back at the factory and it's kind of revealed that Uncle Yam had bought this
clock with
anti-clock with counterfeit money, breaking one of the central rules.
Effectively the main rule, isn't it?
Don't spend
we
the
find
money.
out that obviously that put them at risk, and the penance of that is that your family get killed.
You and your family get killed.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. We don't know if you...
Yeah, and Yam showed a picture earlier to Lee, and he's got like 5 daughters.
He's got like 5 daughters and a wife, and and he's just like begging, and it's like really sad.
He's like, I knew your father.
Yeah, and he's like, because he used to work for Painter's dad.
Yeah, and Lee's there like, no, like let him off, like he made a mistake.
And Uncle Yam's like smashing his head into the gravel on the floor.
He breaks his glasses on the floor.
And he's like in like repose or whatever, where he's like down on the floor on his knees, and he's like smashing his head, and he's like, please.
And then like Painter puts their heads together and like looks him dead in the eyes and then shoots him like in the chest.
Through the heart like 3 times.
Yeah.
And then Lee's just like, no, and like is really like upset with it.
And you get a really cool shot where that Lee and Painter are like face to face. And Painter's got a gun to Lee's head, and he's like, "You follow the rules, otherwise this happens." He's like, "You didn't need to kill his, don't need to kill his family."
Yeah.
And then you get a cool like slow mo bit where the gun goes like next to Lee's head.
Well, he's about to shoot, isn't he? And then he kind of pushes the gun away. Yeah.
And Painter shoots like next to his head, and then punches him in the face.
With the other hand, just like smacks him in the face.
It's all slow motion, and Lee's just like knocked out.
Yeah, so
outside.
he had an explosion on one side and punched in the face on the other side.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a thing that he was then deaf in one ear, but it never kind of comes up.
But the fact that he's bloodied is in the next scene where they're making a deal. So he's come straight from there.
He then wakes up on the sofa.
Yeah, and I think they're in Canada or somewhere like that. We don't really know.
And it's basically this meeting, and it's the meeting between the undercover cops and Painter to buy this counterfeit money.
After the boat where they're through the phone, this is the kind of meet up after that.
And the guy who's called Bishop Marr, I finally wrote it down at this point.
Bishop Marr and Inspector Ho are in the car, and we can see they've got much closer.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, I put trackers in all... Oh, because earlier on the boat, she put a tracker in his Zippo lighter in case anything happened to him then. And then she's like, oh, I put trackers in all the money and in the coat or whatever.
Yeah.
And then he says, oh, do we need it in the lighter? No, you can keep the lighter. And then he leaves to go on the mission.
Yeah, and she opens up the lighter and there's a bit of paper in there.
And I assume that it says...
Like, it's written in like Chinese or something. And but it doesn't... Because we've watched this whole film subtitled, but the writing isn't subtitled. We just see,
because in like Netflix and stuff, it normally is.
Yeah, and it was like, okay, I assume it's like,
it's
will you marry me?
Yeah, right? Because their fiancés in
she says like, oh, my fiance.
Yeah, and then he does like a smile, but like as he leaves,
and like a wink,
and she's like, yeah, kind of thing. Like,
so he then goes into this meeting. He's sitting down. He's sitting down on one sofa. Lee's on the other sofa, and they kind of there's people dotted around the room with guns. The rest of the crew,
and him and Lee, yeah.
And Painter comes in and he's talking. He put down like $3 million in a bag on the table. Yeah. And then Painter's like really weird, and he's like, "What, Joe? What? I'm kind of done with this. Do you want to buy the plates?"
Yeah.
And Bishop Marr's like,
"I don't know.
No, I just want. I don't know. I don't know how to do this. I just want the counterfeit money." Yeah. And he's like, "No, buy the plates," and brings in like a suitcase that is open in front of Lee, and he's like, "Lee, show him the plates."
And we can see in a reflection from Bishop's side that it's like a revolver.
Yeah, and Lee's really like hesitant.
Yeah,
and he's like, "Show him the plates." And then as Lee reaches it for it, Bishop jumps over, and there's a bit of a struggle.
And then Painter just from behind shoots in the back like a load.
And he like lands on top of Lee on the sofa, and he kind of gets close to Lee, and he's like, next time, do what I say.
Like, this is your last chance. This is your last chance.
This is your last chance.
Then he takes him to the next room.
Yeah.
They're in kind of like a hotel suite, aren't they?
Yeah, and they open up the doors, and Yun Man and Lockman have been kidnapped, and they're blindfolded and taped around their mouth on the bed.
See, this is another thing, because you don't see either of their faces because they're covered up by tape and eye blindfolds and stuff. So, yeah, anyway. We'll get to why I'm slightly frustrated by this. It's not necessarily a fault of the film. It was partly because I paused it just after the initial
I think it's almost intentional.
Yes, I think that's right. But
yeah, he's like, I've got them, and he's like, and he gives him a revolver, kind of holds it in his hand, and he's like, shoot her fiance.
Shoot the fiance, then you can have her, as if that's just the way it works.
That's how it works, yeah.
And what happens then? He's not doing it, basically.
Yeah,
again, he doesn't want to shoot anybody.
He's really reluctant. And I think the Lock One gets shot.
Yeah, well, no, Sao Ching is there with an Uzi. She's one of the guards, and I think she's the one who starts shooting because Lee Man's being threatened. I think the gun gets turned on him.
So Lee Man turns and points the gun at Painter.
Yeah.
And he's like,
a standoff between the two.
And Painter then
guys.
pulls his gun out and points it back at him.
And he's like, "We're partners. You can't do how dare you?"
And no, then Painter shoots Lockman. I've written down.
Yeah.
But
Sao Ching just starts shooting because Lee's in trouble.
Yeah, and Lee runs over, grabs Yun, and like pulls her to the floor off the bed, and just like holds her.
On the floor.
And
then everyone just starts getting shot. Basically, the whole gang, as far as we know, have just been all shot by each other at that point. And then Lee Man has protected the real Yun on the floor. He turns round, and Painter is at the door with a gun, and then he finally does. Oh no, he's pointing the gun. He's like, Painter says, $1 million if you shoot me. Just basically just taking the piss, like you're a chicken, and then he just does it.
He shoots him
a load of times.
At this point, I won't tell you, but I've written "fuck" on the side because I remember the description of the film at this point.
Yes,
and it really pissed me off.
Yes, see, this is what happened to me in the action scene.
Yeah,
because of what was happening with
anyway,
and he slumps down, and then Painter is still gonna go and shoot him, so then Lee has to just unload the rest of his gun into him. And we see it from like behind the door, just the bullet holes and blood coming through. It's quite cool.
And then Lee and Sao Ching go.
So Sao Ching is like, we can't take Yun with us because she's kind of like the new girlfriend almost.
Yeah,
and she's just like, let's go. And he's trying to stay, so she just pulls.
They grab like $3 million and go off to the resort that Painter had bought for Lee.
And does it say they hide out for like a year or something? I don't know if we get a time frame on there.
Yeah, it's quite a long time.
I think it's a year or two, maybe.
Yeah, and then eventually, Lee's reading a newspaper
and he sees these headlines, and it turns out that Painter must be alive because Uncle Yam's family are all
and it turns out Sao Ching's been hiding newspapers from him.
Yeah.
And it's a revelation that somehow, despite being riddled with bullets, Painter is alive.
Yes. Is this the kind of bit where you're thinking?
Oh no, it's the last bit.
Yeah. And then Lee comes out of hiding, and he's in Thailand.
He's like, I want to go see Yun.
And he pays for something, as is the fucking rules. He pays for something with a counterfeit.
It's like a train ticket. He's at like the train station.
I don't know why at that point, because they're supposed to be super bills. I'm not sure why the police immediately realise.
Well, I assume because he's been hiding out for a couple of years as well. They might even be looking for him.
Yeah, and they might not be as good as they were. They might have been found out, these new bills. Yeah. Either way, a load of police start beating him up.
He's arrested at the station. Yeah. He's taken his police car, and he spots across the road Painter with
He's got the program of Yun Man, and he's just waving it really menacingly, and then he hides behind it like a fan. Yeah. It's very silly. It is. And Lee's like, no, don't go.
He's alive. He's like, he says to the police, like, he's right there. He's gonna kill her. And then we go back to current day.
Right. Okay. So this is another thing that made me think what the twist is. The Yun Man that we see in the police station has quite a lot of makeup on very clearly. She's also wearing a very high-necked thing. And we see earlier on that Sao Ching has big scars underneath her chin. So I'm kind of like, I think I know what's going on.
At this point, you're
like,
suspecting that Yun Man is secretly Sao Ching.
Yes, which, you know, may or may not be the case. Lee gets released on bail in the present day.
To like Yun's,
because as far as we know, that's the story up to now. He's told all his stuff.
Yeah, that's leading up to when he's been arrested. So now we're all caught up with the flashback. There's no more flashback.
That's right. Well,
there's no more. Yeah. So Lee's released to Yun, and they go back to like her fancy hotel or something.
Yeah, and the lawyer says, "Don't open the door for anyone. Police might turn up later. Just leave it."
Yeah, call me if they come. The police,
I think Inspector Ho says you have to report in every 24 hours. So he's on he's on bail, isn't he? Basically.
Yeah, and then they start getting it on.
I mean, he's kind of weirdly handsy and like almost a bit rapey with her at the start because she doesn't seem to want to.
But then he's like, "Will you forgive me?" Into it
because you think that you're supposed to think this is Yun Man. If it's Yun Man, it's really fucked up for him to be trying anything. Yeah, because he was implicit in the killing of her.
At this point, I still thought this was Yun Man.
You thought, well, I mean, to be fair, because she looks disgusted, and then she kind of gives in and they start kissing and stuff.
And then we see, whilst that's happening, we see Painter in a police uniform walking into the police station, and Inspector Ho spots him.
She's smoking. Oh, no, because is that when she has like she thinks that she sees her fiance, or is that a different?
Yeah, one? She thinks she sees a fiance, and it's just some guy
who asked for a
who's
lighter.
Also smoking.
She has a similar experience to when they first met. She's off in thought, and then in the background, we see a police van door open up,
and she sees,
and it's well framed because you can see you're like something's going on.
Whilst he's being interrogated, Lee has given them a face
like a police sketch.
Yeah.
Kind of thing,
So they know exactly what Painter looks like. Yeah, and then Painter walks past Inspector Ho in a police uniform, and she's like, "Holy shit!"
And he's like rushing, like he's
and he rushes into this lift,
like how someone would do, like in a heist kind of thing, like strideful, kind of purposeful.
And then she says like, "Wanted man going to level 4, wanted man going to level 4," and all these SWAT people are running around.
It's quite intense.
And Painter he goes into the briefing room.
He sees something almost out of the corner of his eye.
Yeah, he goes into the briefing room and picks up, and he sees the police sketch of him.
Yeah.
And then all this like SWAT team and everything
like a
rushing
flashbang,
in.
Isn't there? And then suddenly he's just surrounded. It's great.
And he's like on the floor, and he's like
almost like he's not acting, crying, but he's like
acting all confused.
And they're like, "You're Painter," basically.
Yeah, and he's like, "No, I've been working here for years. My badge number's this."
And he's like, "I worked with like your son to one of them."
Yeah, and then he says to Inspector Ho,
this is a good.
He was like, "I was your driver when we picked up the guy."
Yeah.
Because when that happens at the start of the film, he's looking in the mirror, and she's like, "Stop doing that. Stop doing that." And then it's revealed at this point, the camera pans, it goes back to the scene. And he's looking in the mirror, and it was
Chow Yun-fat
Chow Yun-fat as the driver, and it turns out,
and it's the same name. The name that he gave for Painter is just this guy's name.
And I've written here in capitals, "Story made up." So whilst they're in that van, Lee has like memorized this guy's face.
Yeah, so that he could replicate
invented this character. And it turns out that Lee Man is Painter.
Yes.
Dun dun dun.
And unfortunately, my first note was about the Amazon description, which says "Usual Suspects meets The Fight Club," and I thought that's funny because they put "the" in front of Fight Club. Spoilers for those films.
But yeah, one of the most famous plot twists of all time. Usual Suspects turns out that
it's exactly the same as Usual Suspects.
Kevin Spacey is Kaiser Soze. He's been interrogated all film, and he walks down, and he's Kaiser Soze.
And the dual protagonists are both the same guy as Fight Club. And the reason why I thought it in the big action
I forgot about the Fight Club.
The reason I thought about it in the big action scene is because Painter's doing all the action, and Lee Man is cowering and not doing anything.
Yeah.
And the only reason I questioned it is because there's lots of scenes which are obviously fabricated where they're both having conversations or they're having arguments with each other and nobody's reacting weirdly. So compared to something like Fight Club, in which you could replay it and see it, in this, because he is fibbing like Kaiser Soze, it's not as easy to pick up, which is quite good in some ways. But
so then we get the reveals that Lee Mann was the mastermind behind the whole project,
and we don't really get a lot. We get flashbacks which retell a lot of it, but there are still a lot of plot things. Like
we just
the third generation thing is that because he,
a lot of it's not filled in. But so. We get it turns out that Yun Man is fake. We get a flashback to that when she got her face surgery.
Yes.
She was made to look exactly like Yun Man.
Yes.
Not just
a bit like her,
It was exactly the same.
Yeah, it's in those flashbacks, she's then played by the same actress as Yun Man. And then it shows the bit in the gallery, you're right, and it's just her and Lee Man, who is Painter. And he's being horrible to her. He's like, don't come here, like it's too risky. And he covers her head up and they leave, kind of thing.
And it was her, Seo Ching, who kidnapped Yun Man and Lok Man.
And she wanted him to kill both of them so that she could be his only Yun Man, Seo Ching. And at this point, also Lee Man gets away. They both get away in the hotel. Don't they? We don't see what happens, but look, there's like two dead and loads of injured
boat,
people.
and they're driving away. They're going.
Well, no. Before that, there's the bit in the hotel.
Oh yeah,
we go back to just after they had sex, and she says, "Did you think about me or Yun Man?" And he says, "Sometimes the fake is better than the real thing," which is what Painter said at the start to him.
And she rolls over, she's got like scars down her back from the fire.
You can tell that she's
and then something else that let me say that it's quite an interesting conversation they have.
Yeah. And there's she basically knows that he doesn't love her. And he says, like, sometimes faking it is the only thing that you can do for, people like us. And then we see that she's got that lighter that Inspector Ho has been flicking and playing with the whole time, which is her fiance Bishop Mars lighter, the one that had the tracker in it. Which I thought, tracker, but it turns out we see her put a note in it, just like the proposal. But it's got the name and number of the boat which they're going to be escaping from.
So then, we go.
She feels betrayed, even still. Oh, it also turns out that the letter that he sent at the start was to the resort where she lived, and it was asking for her help. So that's why she knew to come to the prison. So they're on this boat to the Philippines. He says, we'll be at the Philippines like 4 hours, and then she cuts out the engine, and he's like, "What?" And all these police mates turn up, and he's like, and she's like, "Oh, we've been driving around in circles since we left Hong Kong." And she's like, "Oh, it's just like us. We're just going around in circles. We can't get anywhere." And then he's like, "Keep going." And then she reveals that
he goes to to move the boat forward.
And there's just
accelerate,
C4
and there's just bombs everywhere, and she's holding a detonator. And he's like, "Oh," and then. And
Inspector Ho sees it from her boat, and she kind of gets this kind of closure of them both just blowing up. And then there's one final bit.
One final twist. So then Inspector Ho visits the real Yun Man.
Yes.
And kind of has
they find out when they realise that she was a fake Yun Man, they say, "Oh, she's been in northern China painting since her fiance died." So they realized that was the thing that tipped them off. I think they've realized that this is the fake Yun Man, which means it must have been Seo Ching.
So and they show the real Yun Man a picture.
Well, they say Painter's dead, and she says, "I don't care. Since my fiance died, it doesn't matter." And then Ho says,
"This is basically who Painter is. Do you recognize this man?" Showing a picture of Lee Man. We thinking like, "Oh, they used to date and they'd be together." And she's like, "Oh yeah, he used to be my neighbor." And we get one final flashback that they were never together. He would just like stalk her and perv on her.
And it turned out he lived with Uncle Yam the whole time.
And she was with Lok Man the whole time. And I thought we were done with twists, and we got one last one. I was like,
and I'm so glad that I didn't. That wasn't one that we could have ever seen coming.
No, I was like, and it makes so much sense. Like everything else was made up, so of course. His relationship with Yun Man, he just fell in love with the girl next door who never reciprocated.
And also then the last line is Uncle Yam says, "Don't bother with her, like you're just a spectator like everyone else, and you have to become the leading man." Which is what Painter's been telling him the whole time. one thing about that last twist, although it was amazing, and not amazing, it was great to have a last twist. It was exactly the same as what they do in Joker, which is a film that came out a year later.
Yeah.
So I think Todd Phillips probably saw this film.
Quite possibly, yeah.
Spoilers for Joker.
I mean, if you've got this far into the podcast and you're worried about spoilers, like...
But no, it's a great little...
I've got one last note, which is...
please.
Unlike my science project, this has got a great credit song. It came on...
What was it? It was an English... I imagine it's a Chinese band, but...
Yeah, singing in English. And it was played at some point in the film.
Right, okay.
And it's about, like, counterfeiting.
Oh, is
it is a theme. And I was just like, yeah, no, this is good. And it made me think of how terrible that science project theme was. That you liked.
You say that, Lewis. About 2 days later, we were here and I put it on and we were all vibing to that song.
Yeah, but it still doesn't mean it was good.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, that actually was a fun, enjoyable song. I liked that.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, I haven't got any trivia because I've used it all up throughout the film.
The only one that I had was about the Project Gutenberg itself. So
yeah,
I didn't, it's quite hard to find stuff because a lot of stuff is either in Chinese or it just doesn't seem to exist for us anyway.
Yeah.
But Project Gutenberg, you might have seen when you look it up, is a name for a website where public domain books are available for free download. So it's like an ebook library basically.
Right.
I think it was started a long time ago, like 20 years ago or something. It's like it's a long-term thing. And I don't know if that's got any connection, maybe to do with, free press giving out stuff. I don't know if there's some connection there.
Maybe it's got a different reputation in Hong Kong.
Yeah, but I mean, that's all I could...
But yeah, so you obviously figured out the Yun Man bit way earlier than I did.
Yeah.
The bit, where I was like, I've written fuck.
What was
when Lee shoots and kills Painter,
right?
I've written next to it, "Fuck Usual Suspects." So I was like, that's where it dropped to me. It was like, oh no, Lee is Painter.
What about that?
I think because Painter had been absolutely killed.
Oh, we knew that he was still concerned about...
Well, no, at that point I was like, oh, if Painter's dead, then who are they looking for? And I was like, oh wait. Then I remembered it said Usual Suspects in the fucking description.
I know, and I don't normally read the descriptions that closely. It was the fact that it said The Fight Club that I thought was funny, and that's why I wrote it down as my first note. And then obviously because I had it there, I was like, fuck.
I completely forgot that it mentioned fight. So I saw Fight Club and I anticipated that there'd be lots of fighting in the film.
Right. Okay.
I didn't think about the twist
I thought it was
the
more
double personalities.
Like David Fincher kind of like thrillery, modern thriller kind of thing.
But then also the direct translation of the Hong Kong title being without a pair or no pair
is there's only one
is a spoiler.
Protagonist,
it's a spoiler in itself. It's kind of like when the original Planet of the Apes film came out, the posters had the Statue of Liberty on the beach, and it's like, why ruin like one of the greatest twists ever?
How many films can we spoil in this one episode?
Well, it's an episode about twists, so.
But yeah, I mean,
also in The Sixth Sense, he was actually dead. Bruce Willis is dead the whole time.
No, I actually haven't seen that.
Nor have I. I just know the twist, so I've never bothered.
Yeah, I mean, there's some. I wasn't sure. So the stuff with the Sao Cheng Yun Man, I don't know how much. I know we were supposed. The fact they gave her the passport of Yun Man is supposed to be some sort of clue.
Didn't figure that out until it was revealed.
The thing is
basically.
as well, because we don't really see either of their faces that much. We see Sao Cheng once in a very brief scene, and then we see her burning where she's like obscured, and then we see her with surgery scars and like the eyebrows and stuff. And I don't know if she's supposed to, because they say, oh, you've got a new face at that point. So I don't.
Yeah,
do you know
it's also a factor as well. Is that with this film? I don't know about you. I spent a lot of it reading subtitles.
That's it as well.
Which means you're spending less time looking at. There's a lot of like we get getting Bobby and Brother 4 mixed up.
Absolutely.
And because
one of them was more grizzled than the other, but I don't know.
And because they're speaking in Chinese, you don't recognize them as much. You don't recognize their voices.
Yeah.
So if it was, even if it was dubbed, you might know the characters better because you know the voices differently.
Yeah,
but when it's just you're reading subtitles and a bunch of people speaking Chinese, it's harder to tell the difference between the characters.
Yeah, I think that's definitely right. Yeah, I don't know if that would have helped at all.
I had it before when I watched Shin Godzilla, which I've watched a few times, and that's got like 1,000. It's only really got 2 kind of half main characters and like 1,000 different politicians it goes through.
Yeah,
because it's all quick subtitles, you kind of get a lot of them mixed up.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah,
but
I mean, yeah. It's a different, and there's also there's quite a lot of characters in this, and
and because
a lot of it is kind of like. It moves at quite a. Although I said there's pacing issues, I'm mainly talking about that first half an hour.
Yeah,
because I think
the rest of it's pretty swift.
That first half an hour, although there's some great kind of, just that initial scene, the kind of stamp painting thing.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of films where there's a slow start, like a horror film, for example.
Yeah.
If there's going to be a big build up, they'll do a scary bit at the very beginning, so you know what you're in for.
Yeah.
Or if there's a murder thing, they'll do the murder at the start, and then you have. Do you know what I mean? Whereas with this, although there's police stuff,
we
at the
do
start,
get the little stump bit as well.
What, the explosion thing?
No, the stump.
The stamp. Yeah. But I mean, I suppose overall it is kind of like a crime drama, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
So I suppose it is representative, but I just thought the bit when they're on the plane really kicked it into gear for me.
Yeah.
And I wish that had come a bit earlier. Maybe cut out.
That makes sense.
I don't know. I mean, I can see how that's my main criticism, really.
Yeah, I mean, I don't quite share that criticism. I know where you're coming from, but I never quite felt
also,
that.
because I had to pause it for a bit in that sequence, it made it feel longer for me.
See, I paused it about halfway through to like go to the toilet, get a drink.
Yeah.
Just kind of, because obviously reading subtitles, writing stuff down.
Yeah.
But part of me was like, I don't want to stop. I want to carry on going.
No, I know what you mean.
I don't want to be exhausted by the end of the film from making notes.
Yeah, no, totally
but
fair,
overall, I thought it was brilliant.
I thought it was good. Yeah.
The cinematography is great. Some of the editing for the montages is brilliant.
Yeah.
If we hadn't been spoiled with the twist was great.
It was good. And the fact there was still that final twist for us, I think that redeemed it a little bit for me.
And apart from reading Usual Suspects in the description, I don't think I would have figured it out.
No.
So I didn't figure out Yun Man. I didn't figure out the last bit. That's the only bit of Lee being the painter that I figured out. And that was because I saw Usual Suspects. So if it was a different description,
I think maybe towards the end,
I wouldn't have figured
I might have kind of started thinking about some clues and stuff. But no, I can totally see that. And there's the way that it's done, where he turns out. I mean, that he's from the start. It's him and Painter are supposedly the only survivors of the gang.
Yeah,
it means towards the end, even when we see that Yun Man was there, she was blindfolded, all that kind of stuff. He's the only one who can verify the story, basically. Yeah, and Sao Ching.
And that's the thing. You go back and there's so many clues. Like, it's very clever, and that like if we sat down and watched that a second time, there'd be so much stuff you notice.
Yeah.
Kind of like Shutter Island. Kind of, you watch it a second time and you're like,
but also I do
think spoil that twist as well.
I also do think that there were quite a lot of things that it didn't necessarily invalidate the twist, but because he's fibbing the whole time, he's telling a lie.
Yeah.
Lots of the scenes where both characters are in it don't necessarily indicate the truth. Do you know what I mean? Which I don't think is a bad thing.
They could be like fictional
That's
stories.
what I mean. He's clearly, because we didn't really cover it, but we see a lot of the flashbacks of these important scenes, and it does like a camera spin round, and it's just him leading the gang. And we see the action scene with the 2 AKs, and it's him instead.
Yeah.
We do see all those scenes very quickly in succession.
Yeah. So it makes me kind of think maybe the conversations between Lee and Painter, or just conversations he had with himself, or thoughts in his head.
It's like a Tyler Durden situation. He's having these. It's almost like a split personality, because
I don't think it's a split personality.
No, it is in the story. He's kind of split the personality into 2 parts. Yeah.
And it does go back to the whole him wanting to be the leading man.
That's exactly it. But it's almost it shows as well how almost his insecurities, without getting too deep into it, because he isn't even the leading man in his own story.
Yeah.
Like, he's literally told a story where he's not the leading man, which is kind of...
I think he's a fascinating
despite
character.
the fact that he's called Lee Imagine if his middle name was Ding.
Leading man. But no, I thought his character was brilliant.
And the acting is, he's so like timid and like nervous. And then when we see the bits at the end,
it's completely, both of them are brilliant, because also Chow Yun-fat, we get him as Aaron Kwok. We get him as the painter, but then at the end we get him as this innocent, almost like
almost
bit
like
timid,
an old man,
timid like policeman. He's like, what? And you're like, holy shit! Like,
there's a bit where he's like drinking tea and he's almost like shaking at the end, because once they realise their mistake, they had to like give him a cup of tea to like calm his nerves.
It's like, it's so funny seeing him like that after seeing him spend the whole film as this kind of like ruthless, like criminal leader, and then he's like, oh no. But
good stuff. Yeah, what do you think about ratings then? I think I'm thinking based on, I think this is boosted it up a little bit for me almost. I think
I had a good idea of my rating last night.
I think I know what
and then I thought I'd say it.
So I've actually started, I think, did we talk about it on pod, or it might have been after we were in the cinema last week? We were talking about Letterboxd accounts.
Oh yeah, that was on here last week.
I've started a Letterboxd account since then, and I went back on all my streaming services, and for the last like 3 months I've rated everything retrospectively with little reviews. I didn't want to go back further than that, because I think we spoke about how, I don't know, I feel like that taints it a little bit, but it turns out I've watched a lot of films in the last 3 months, and I rated this last night and it's out of 5. I rated it 3.5, but I think I'm gonna go for an 8 out of 10.
Okay. Yeah, fair. Is that your highest rated film?
I'm pretty sure I've rated a few 6s and 7s, and it is a better film. So it just in that sense, it has to go higher for me.
Fair enough. See, last night the film ended, I thought about it, because I was on IMDb looking up trivia.
Yeah.
I thought of a rating, and I was like, I won't solidify it until we come here.
Yeah.
And talking about it, I was like, actually, I'm giving it a 9. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10.
Wow.
By far I think it's genuinely by far the best film we've watched.
It's definitely...
And Joe, immediately...
Something about it just wasn't... I don't know if it was that pacing.
My biggest criticism is that the spoiler was ruined for me by Prime.
I did think it was a good film,
but like, I immediately after, like, on my phone, recommended it to a couple of my friends.
Yeah,
I was like, guys, watch The Counterfeit on Prime.
Yeah,
like,
nice.
I mean, genuinely thought it was brilliant.
8 is my highest as well. I'm pretty sure. Like, may have given. I don't think Project Power was an 8.
I think I gave Project Power an 8.
I think I probably went 7, because, well, as with all of them, I seem to go one lower than you, or one higher.
One higher or one lower. I think it's usually one higher, but one lower this time.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah.
I guess it kind of helps when we've been talking in the film together. Our opinions will slowly become more similar if we're talking it out.
Unless it's something like My Science Project.
Yeah, that's just a shit film. So yeah, I'm gonna put it out there and give this a 9 out of 10.
Nice.
Because I genuinely enjoy this, and I kind of want to watch it again at some point.
Yeah, well, it made me think that some of the films that we mentioned at the start, like you said, Infernal Affairs. I would really like to check out, and I know we've got a couple of other, I think they're Jackie Chan films on the list. I don't know if we've got any other kind of Hong Kong dramas, action films, but if there are any, it'd be great to check some out.
So I think this might be a better film than The Usual Suspects, even though like The Usual Suspects obviously did it first.
I
like The Usual Suspects.
Potentially agree with you there. I watched The Usual Suspects years and years ago.
I just think a lot of like the editing and the cinematography and the close-up shots just make this like another level.
It's actually like last week I was talking about Layer Cake and The Gentleman. I know you haven't seen either of them, but I would say it's a similar comparison in some ways. That one was made about 10, well, with this and Usual Suspects, it's a lot longer, 20 years. Nearly. But they tread similar stories in parts. Yeah. But one is much more modern and stylish than the other. Yeah. I think it's a kind of similar comparison there. But yeah, cool.
Yeah, cool.
Anything else to say on that one?
No, I think that's Project Gutenberg.
Project Gutenberg. So on to personal projects. Do you want to start today, Lewis?
Yeah, so I haven't really been watching anything new. We went to the cinema, but we'll talk about that next week.
Yeah, it's a bit of a long episode.
Yeah, so we'll save that.
Yeah.
But I did on Netflix start watching Daredevil again.
Right, okay.
Because it keeps coming up and I was like, you know what, Daredevil's really good. I've just never gone back and watched it.
I've really been meaning to, especially if Charlie Cox is coming back in the MCU.
I know.
She may be.
The whole time I watch it, I'm like, they need to bring Charlie Cox back. They need to bring Vincent D'Onofrio back as Kingpin because he's so good. Even John Bernthal as Punisher.
Luke Cage, and Jessica Jones is fine.
The first season of Jessica Jones is arguably the best Marvel series.
What's she called? Kristen
Ritter.
Yeah, she's fine. Yeah. I don't know.
But Charlie Cox as Daredevil is so spot on.
If it's just him and Vincent D'Onofrio, fine.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It made me like, well, when I was going to watch it, I was like, I finished season 1 and I was like, now, do I watch Iron Fist, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, or do I just say, fuck that? So I was like, I'm just going to watch Daredevil.
You know what I imagine that they'll probably do? If they do bring some of them in, they could easily just do almost like a Star Wars Legends, but Marvel multiverse or something.
Yeah.
Just classify those as a different dimension.
But because they're on Netflix, they won't stick them on Disney Plus.
That's true.
Because it's literally their Netflix series, aren't they?
So they would just say, just officially, they would just say it's from a different dimension.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, look, Iron Fist is now played by somebody who is willing to train in martial arts.
Oh, would you look at that? Yeah, it made me laugh as well. Like the first few episodes, I forgot how much they mention the first Avengers film. They're like, oh yes, the incident. And, oh, and things got destroyed without ever
we tend to get
clearly
that
saying it.
In a lot of those. And they say like, oh, is there any magic hammers coming down?
Yeah.
Oh, big green guy.
Yeah. And then I started season 2 and Claire, who's like the nurse that helps him.
Rosario Dawson.
She's then like, oh yeah, I know a big strong guy as well. I've been hanging around. I was like, oh yeah, this is after Luke Cage season 1.
Luke 1 series Cage.
But yeah, no, it's just and like so now I'm like a bit into season 2.
I will watch it. Amy's never seen. She's seen part of season 1 when she used to have flatmates. I think they watched it.
Yeah,
so I would. Yeah,
I'm a bit of season 2 where obviously Punisher showed up, Elektra showed up.
Yeah, season 2, both 1 and 2, I thought were really good.
Yeah, I think season 3 is really good as well, but I can't remember what happened.
Bullseye.
Oh yeah,
there's some good stuff.
It's all really, really good.
It's by far the best Marvel Netflix series.
I'd say it's the best Marvel series. I think it's better than WandaVision, Loki, or Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I'm still only 2 episodes into What If.
I remember those Netflix shows, maybe not Daredevil, but I remember them dragging a little bit. They felt they had to do the 12 episodes.
It's 13 episodes, but it's because they had the whole thing where they released the entire season at the same time.
Yeah,
so people would just binge it.
Yeah, I just think
rather than having a week to week.
Daredevil, but it does still mean, even if it's good, that there will be episodes where nothing happens and it's a flashback.
I know what you mean.
And we've talked about it before. When we were talking about Downton Abbey, we were saying that compared to American shows, 8 episodes means that every episode something's going to happen.
Yeah.
And, 24 episodes in a season is one thing. 13, where by the end of, Luke Cage season 2 or whatever, half of it is just nothing's happening.
I think Daredevil does.
I'm just soured by it a little bit, as you can hear from the venom in my voice.
Yeah, in that I think I'm on episode 5 or 6 season 2, and Punisher's been arrested, so they kind of have a mid-season climax because Kingpin gets arrested.
2 does some good stuff with that. Yeah,
so they do to kind of pace it a bit better. They'll have a mid-season climax rather than building up to episode 13.
Yeah. No, that's true. And I think even in 1, there's the different gangs and stuff.
Exactly.
Nobu and stuff like that.
And Kingpin does get arrested and then break out.
Yeah,
but that's more towards the end.
I can't remember all of that.
I probably won't bother with Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, or Iron Fist.
No, I wouldn't.
I might watch The Punisher though.
I never finished Punisher, so
it is good.
I think I'll watch at some point through Daredevil and then watch Punisher after.
Yeah. Jessica Jones season 1
I started
that
again with Amy, and we got about halfway through because she really likes David Tennant, as most people do.
He's
but for
brilliant
some
in that
reason, I think it's because there was an episode where nothing was happening.
Right.
And it just,
I remember,
we're just so impatient with these things.
I remember once me and Christina, before we were together, were watching Jessica Jones when I went to visit her at uni.
Yeah.
And we watched a couple episodes and we were like, oh God, this is depressing. Let's turn this off and watch the latest episode of Rick and Morty instead, which is the episode that finishes with him like almost kills himself. And I was like, wow, we should watch less depressing TV shows. Let's stick on something fun and happy. I think we ended up watching Spy Kids.
Spy Kids is great.
Like, that would do it.
Cool.
Yeah, you've been watching anything?
I watched yesterday. Actually, this is why I took the break. I remember what it was, because I started the film Project Gutenberg. Amy was doing some stuff. She was sorting some stuff out for project that she's got.
Her own personal project.
A wedding's coming up. She's making some stuff for it. And then we were going to eat dinner. And because it's a subtitle film and I wanted to make notes, I thought we kind of need to pause this really. So we started watching the new Disney Plus series, Only Murders in the Building.
Oh yeah,
which is Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez.
Oh,
which I think they spoke about on a podcast or something we were listening to at some point.
I think I saw like a poster. You might have seen a poster.
It's kind of like a dark comedy crime drama.
Yeah, because I remember thinking it was weird. I saw Steve Martin, Martin Short, and I was like, okay. And then Selena Gomez, I was like, that's interesting.
So they all live in this New York apartment, and they're all like really big fans of this true crime podcast, and they kind of have a bonding moment over that. And then they find out that one of their neighbors has been murdered, or supposedly a suicide, but they all saw him in an elevator, and they thought something's going on here. And they decide to create their own podcast called Only Murders in the Building, because one of them suggests looking at a murder in Central Park that's just happened. And then they say, no, Only Murders in the Building. And then that kind of sticks as the name.
Cool.
And it's good. It's 30 minutes.
Wouldn't it be cool if someone made a TV show about the Project podcast?
Well, see how
three fans of the Project podcast come together to make their own project.
But yeah, they start. I've only on the first episode, but they're half-an-hour episodes. You know, they're likable characters. It's some of it was a little bit like, oh, now we're all going to tell our backstories in one go. But I think that's just to get it out of the way in the first episode. Yeah, it's coming out weekly, so there's 4 episodes out now. It's a good light thing with a bit of drama and stuff in it.
Cool, worth watching there. Definitely, if it's true crime as well, I could probably get Christina into it as well.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we were talking, I think, last week about true crime documentaries, and I don't watch any. I know most podcasts, when we've done our promotion, following people, there's so many true crime podcasts. I've never listened to any of them. I might at some point maybe listen to Serial or something like that. Is that the true crime one?
I don't know. I'm just thinking I might wait until we finish watching What If before recommending this to Christina, because otherwise it'll be another thing that gets in the way.
Serial is a non-fiction podcast.
Nice.
Oh yeah, non-fiction. Yeah. Okay. But it's not about crime. It's not about true crime. I think it's also. Oh no, it's partly about. Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
don't listen to them. Listen to us.
This will probably be the sort of thing that Christina would be into. But I won't recommend it till we finish What If.
Yes.
Otherwise we'll never finish What If.
Are you up to date? We'll talk about it.
No, haven't watched any more.
Well, please do, because there's some good stuff in there.
It's one of those when you watch a series with someone else, you both need to want to watch it.
I know, yeah. I mean, you might just have to be like, I need to just watch it. So. Yeah. Especially if it starts. I'll tell if it starts having actual implications for the other things. I'll tell you. You can use that as a bit of leverage there, or just say that you don't have to watch.
Although she hasn't watched Black Widow or Shang-Chi, so she probably wouldn't be fast.
But for
me, we've just been watching Star Trek. She'll get home from work and we'll watch a couple episodes of Star Trek. She'll go to bed.
Sounds great.
I mean, we watch Star Trek because we like Star Trek. Like, it's not like, oh damn, Star Trek. I like Star Trek. And
I know.
I've been working for it for many years now, but that's something for another time.
For when we do our multiple episodes about Star Trek.
Oh yeah, well we've got
at least one.
Yeah. I was going to say something about that actually at the start. Don't know, something that's going to come up in that we'll talk about when it comes up.
Yeah,
so
we'll do that at some point.
So I think that's that.
I
then.
think that's it. So thank you for listening. In terms of reaching us, if you want to contact us via email, you can send us a email at theprojectprojectpod@gmail.com. On Facebook and Instagram, we are the Project Project Pod, and on Twitter, we are at that Project Pod. On Reddit, it's the Project Project. And you can also leave us reviews on different podcasting platforms.
Yeah, give us a 5-star review if you like what we're doing.
Yeah.
Write 5 stars, and if you've got anything you'd like to improve on, do that. But
the stars are the thing that matters.
It just helps get our name out there.
Yes.
Helps get our name out there. We enjoy doing this, and hopefully you enjoy listening to it. So we want more people to be able to enjoy this. So let's give us a nice 5-star review.
And if you're someone who kind of does a lot of Twitter and Instagram, and you see people asking for recommendations, you've been enjoying us, just give us a tag.
Pass on the name.
If it's something that you believe in,
we need to think like a fun tagline to get people to like
pass on the project.
Yeah.
Pass on the project. Don't know why I did the
project.
Project the project.
Yeah.
Into the projection of the
any way you
project.
can help out, we will wholly appreciate it. And get in touch as well through those socials. We'd love to hear from you. We've spoken to a couple of people. It's always fun interacting.
It's nice to have a bit of feedback. We kind of vaguely keep an eye on where listeners are coming from. We've got some stats. It's nice to see people all over the place, and some places that we would never expect to have people listening to our silly recaps of films effectively. But anything else you want to add today, Lewis?
No, I look forward to hearing from you in Project October.
So thanks for listening to the episode. We'll see you next episode, and goodbye.